All right, well, here we go. Tremors Live number 10. Got Matt here with my partner, Chris Aiken. What's Chris? How you doing, man?
What is up, man? How we doing tonight?
Doing real good, man. We got a pretty damn awesome lineup tonight, man. I'm pretty pumped for this one. We haven't really touched too much on the hardcore stuff since we've been doing the live Tremors here, but tonight we're going to go full fledged with that. We got three veterans that have been in the hardcore scene, and not just the hardcore. They played other type of music as well. But that's obviously sort of their a lot of their background is strong backgrounds in a lot of bands within the hardcore scene. And I guess we'll go ahead and we'll just talk a little bit about them before we get rolling here. So first up, we got Brian Mitz Daniels, and of course Mitz is well known from being a guitarist from our biggest hardcore band in the world of all time, Madball, one of it. Bands all time in hardcore. Grew up, watching those guys. I mean, all the time, going to see them in all the clubs in New York City. And, he's been with some other great bands. Scarhead's another one I grew up loving. Ragmen, we're going to talk to him about that one. That's a great band. Not a lot of people know about.
Sure.
They put out an album back in the early 2000s. And, so we're going to start off with him. And second, we got Greg Saenz, who's, more recently, he's from John Garcia and the band of Gold. Obviously, John Garcia, the legendary singer from Caius, and just one of the innovators of the desert stoner rock, out in the desert there in California, Southern California.
Right.
And he's been with a lot of punk and hardcore bands himself. Excel, I think one of the most underrated crossover bands that existed back in the late 80s there. Early 90s, and he's been with the Dwarves. He's also toured with The Only Man, another desert rock band, more of a psychedelic band. They're one of the originals too. And so those are our first two guests. And of course, to finish things off tonight, we got legendary guitarist from ex-Cro-Mags, originally Mr. Parris Mayhew. He's got a new band right now called Agros, which is sort of like an instrumental hardcore band, and we haven't heard any music from him in like 20 years. So it's going to be a good show tonight.
Oh man, I am so pumped for this one. And it's weird because you would think with obviously Parris is a huge name in the hardcore world. Age of Quarrel. I mean, I think a lot of people start and stop there in the hardcore world. But for me personally, I've got to say it's Mitz and Greg that I am super pumped with. When we first started, and people probably don't know this, but when we first started talking about doing Aftershocks, you and I were both, the one thing we wanted to do was cover a lot of hardcore stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the first common band that we talked about was Madball. We both were like, man, fucking Madball is huge and, huge in our lives. And so having Mitz on, that's like, wow, that's a biggie. And then as far as I'm concerned, my musical life starts and stops with John Garcia, man. Caius and Vistacino and, and the Band of Gold record, I think I've only played about 940 billion times. So, it's one of my absolute favorite albums, certainly of the last 5 years. So, yeah, I'm very pumped up for tonight, man. This is like Chris Aiken wheelhouse music night. It's a good night, man.
No, and like you said, when we started doing this, the Aftershocks, like you said, that was one of the things we wanted to kind of incorporate more with a lot of the interviews we did and the bands we focused on was with the hardcore bands, because there seems like there's not a lot of outlets for them out there. When you look at a lot of these podcasts that are done, especially these video ones that we see a lot of now that we're doing as well, they sort of kind of get put to the side. You know what I mean? It's like hardcore's. I mean, hardcore's kind of like it's always been sort of like, in a way, it's an inclusive scene, but it's exclusive in terms of they're not really. It's not a scene that people really, the musicians and a lot of people who are involved in the scene aren't always looking to really go out there and be a part of our scenes. And so, they sort of do their own thing a lot of times. It's a real, like I said, in-house sort of scene. At least it was for me, when I grew up in New York and stuff. And so, it's good, I think, to kind of, a lot of people, like I said, they don't get to hear a lot of these bands, or they haven't heard of them. So, yeah, it's definitely one of the things we've always wanted to do was give them a platform to get their band and their music heard. And yeah, so that's one of the things we're doing. Yeah.
Well, and I am certainly envious of you because you know, growing up in New York, you got to be part of that scene, you know, that which is you know, my two favorite kinds of music are the Bay Area thrash stuff and hardcore. And you know, I was very fortunate to be living in San Francisco when the Bay Area thing kicked off. You know, maybe not kicked off, but you know, I was out there in 88, 89, 90, 91 when it just exploded. You know, and that to me is probably the most fun time of my life, to just see it happening. At the same time, I've always felt like I almost got robbed of hardcore, because other than like the Spud Monsters, I really didn't have that built in here in Cleveland. You know, I had to kind of only live it when it visited town, and obviously hardcore bands never were big enough, you know, to where they were touring all the time and coming to Cleveland. And you know, when they did come to Cleveland, a lot of times you wouldn't even hear about it. You know, a lot of times I would hear about it after the fact. I would see something in like a review or something in a magazine that, you know, Scarhead had been here, or Madball or something. I'd be like, God damn it, how did I miss that? But
yeah,
you know, it was just because the bands, you know, that kind of music never had the commercial success where people promoted it real well as it traveled through, at least through here, through the Midwest. So, you know, I'm envious of you, man. You got to see all of it right up close and personal, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, I was definitely lucky in that regard. But you know, Cleveland's had their share too. I mean, Integrity is one of one of my all favorite time bands as well. I mean, they're one of the bands that to me really started putting the metal really into hardcore. I mean, they had leads and stuff. Not a lot of hardcore bands would have like leads the way Integrity did.
Sure.
So they're a great band. And obviously, you said Spud Monsters, Ringworm. I mean, a lot of bands that come out of Cleveland. You know what I mean?
I always thought of those as more metal bands than hardcore. I mean, you listen to Ringworm, you listen to Integrity. They had much more of it was almost like it was a metal first with a hardcore influence than a true hardcore. There really wasn't a lot of Black Flag or Cro-Mags or, you know, that influence in that music as much as there was more of a Metallica influence with some hardcore, you know, riffing style mixed in. So
True.
And again, it's you know, I think it's like anything else. You're always jealous of what you don't have, you know?
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Yeah. No, I hear you. Definitely. Well, why don't we go ahead and you want to get started, I guess?
Yeah,
we've got him online here. All right. Well, let's bring in our first guest tonight, Mr. Brian Mitch Daniels. What's up, Mitch? How you doing? Thanks for coming on. I appreciate you coming on with us today, bud.
Thanks for having me on.
Awesome, man. We're doing great, man. You know, let's talk about, I guess, what you've been up to, musically. I know it's been about 3 years now, I think, or so, since you left Madball, and I haven't really heard much from you in terms of musically since. Although recently we did hear you do a kick-ass cover of Sepultura's Manifest. Obviously, I mean, KSID, that's one of my favorite, old-time metal records. It features yourself. You got Tony Campos from Static X in there, Mark Rizzo from Soulfly, and a couple other guys. So go ahead and tell us about how that all came together with you guys. What was the impetus to, for putting that together?
Sure. That was Walter.
Okay.
Who's one of our good friends. And Walter played for a quick minute in Madball before I was in the band. Okay. Walter played for a bunch of years with DRI. Mm-hmm. He's got a crazy resume. He's played with a ton of bands that you would know. So he reached out to me over the summer and said, "Hey, I've been doing these little kind of quarantine jam things, and we want to do this Sepultura track." And I was like, "Cool, awesome." I think by the time he reached out to me, him and Tony had already done the bass and drums. So they sent it to me. I tracked guitars, and then we had Rizzo sent his guitars over. Which was crazy because it was like he sent a video of himself, and that was him playing. So we extracted the audio from that.
Oh, okay.
Put it together, and then found Matt to sing on it, and put it out. It all came together within about a month. It's pretty quick.
Oh wow. Okay, that's pretty quick. Yeah.
Yeah, and put a video together for it, and got a little attention with it. It was fun. It's obviously Sepultura is a band that influenced the shit out of everybody, me included.
Sure.
And that's obvious. That's definitely one of my favorite records.
Sure.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, like I said, I mentioned before, man, it's been, a few years now since you've ended your long tenure with, one of New York hardcore's all-time greatest bands and one of the most influential bands, like I said earlier, that I listened to growing up. And you were with them for 16 years. I mean, that's longer than any other, guitarist that they ever had. And I remember I remember reading that after you left that you really wanted to focus more on producing. So I guess go ahead and fill us in on what you've been up to in terms of, production wise, what you've been doing since you left Madball.
Sure. I mean, producing is something that I was a little bit involved with even before I was ever even in bands. I went to school in New York City right out of high school for audio engineering.
Okay.
And after that, I worked in a recording studio in Manhattan. That was one of the top facilities in the whole world. They were a really famous studio called Skyline Studios.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't doing anything serious there. I was making coffee and answering the phones as, entry level. But
Sure.
they would let you, they kind of turned a blind eye if you wanted to sneak in there at night and do some work. So I got my feet wet a little bit. At first, I produced with another guy. We did some stuff for Sub-Zero. Mm-hmm. New York hardcore band. We also produced a band called Dark Side, New York City.
Sure.
That was Alan Blake from Sheer Terror, the original Sheer Terror guitar player. It was the thing that he did after, and then they, Dark Side's been around a long time.
Yeah, sure.
And so I did some stuff then, and then started playing in bands, and it's something that I kind of picked up. I want to say about 9 or 10 years ago, while I was still in Madball. I got asked to work with an Italian band called Strength Approach, which is a band that I toured with a bunch with Madball, got to be good friends with them. And I did a couple of different things with them. We did an EP, and then they liked how that came out. So I went back over, I think it was in 2015, and did a full-length record with them in Rome. Mm-hmm. But I'm trying to think of what was after that. After that, I worked Dutch band called All for Nothing. Did a full length album for them, and then so when the band thing went down and I ended up leaving the band, it was something that I was like, I really kind of want to focus on this. It's not a full-time thing, I still work. I work in production, event production. I'm a stagehand here in New York. That's pretty much my gig now, but creatively, the musical side of me, I'm still working with bands.
Awesome.
Sure. Well, is it satisfying as a musician to produce other bands? Because I know a million musicians, man, and you guys all have the bug. Even when you go on to do something else, you still want to make music. That's just the musician's creed. Yes. And I almost have always thought that guys that transition like yourself from actual performer to production, that it's got to be difficult because you don't have as much creative input into it. And you listen to another band making music, and while you try to put your ear to it to make it the best it can, there's usually a piece inside of you that's like, I wouldn't fucking do it that way. I would do it this way. And has that been the case for you?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, you have a lot of, it's a different kind of creative input that you have. I mean, most of the bands I've worked with have been bands that are younger. I'm not talking like they're kids, but they're bands that I feel like some of my experience I can impart to them, and I can show them things that I learned over the years in recording with, everything I ever worked with, the stuff I produced, the stuff I recorded with Scarhead, the stuff I recorded with Madball. And I learned from, a lot of those bands that have been doing it from before me. So it's just, it is a very creative and fulfilling process to work with bands like that and show them, little tricks you learned over the years. The biggest message I always try to explain to bands is just preparation. Sure. Preparation, I'll say it 500 times. The more time you spend in the rehearsal studio, the less time you spend in the recording studio, and recording studios are expensive. So you're saving money. I tell guys, if you go in completely prepared where the songs are rehearsed and you've got everything down and all the kinks worked out, well, then the recording process is just a formality almost. You know, most of the creativity and the magic is going to happen when they're writing the songs. And then when you're in the studio, it's just a matter of making that represent, making what you play represent the best angle of the song.
Right, definitely. Now, I'm curious, though. I'm going to devil's advocate this a little bit. That theory works with the experienced pros like yourself that have that are, you know, the grizzled veterans that understand the business. Hardcore bands today, notoriously difficult. You know, they're younger, they don't have that experience. They're, you know, they just honestly, it has a lot to do with experience.
I'll be a little cutthroat.
Go ahead.
Not the bands that are going anywhere.
True.
Okay, yeah.
If you're a hardcore band, first of all, hardcore is about the 18th thing on the list of things that make money.
Right.
Hardcore is not a rich man's game. There's not a lot of money in it. 99% of the bands do it for the love of the music and the scene. So, you know, if you don't have your shit together, if you're going to be a difficult to work with band, you're going to go nowhere. It's the bands that, you know, you look at the bands over the years that have made something of themselves. Those are the guys that took the opportunities that were given to them and made the most of them. You know, bands that went in, like I said, prepared. The bands I've worked with, I've been very lucky. They've been prepared. They've been hungry. They've put tremendous amount of work into their songs and into their records. And if they're working with me, they're open-minded. It's not like they know everything. They've come to me because they say, oh, maybe this guy can show us some stuff we didn't know, or maybe this guy can you know, guide us a little bit. So, you know, again, a difficult hardcore band. When you're Bruce Springsteen or U2, you can be difficult to work with. Millions. When you're a hardcore band, you better have your shit together.
Right. No doubt, man. Is it a situation for you that, you know, you might hear the music and like the music, but when you meet the guys and if they come off like they're just going to be douchebags, that you'll walk away from it? Or would you produce them or will you make your check, I guess?
Yeah, I guess everything. If it was an amazing band and they were a pain in the ass, you know, that would be one thing. If they were great guys and their songs were dog shit, it wouldn't matter. You know, I wouldn't want to work with them. You know, everything's, I guess, relative. I've been very lucky. I haven't worked with anybody who's been any bit difficult. Everybody's got a good attitude. Everybody goes in, you know, knowing what they got to do. And when I tell them, you know, my theory about preparation and having everything, you know, all the kinks ironed out and all the bugs out, they understand it.
Sure, no doubt. You know, just I'm going to pivot back to your you know, music, Mitch. You know, from what I hear, you know, from, you know, mutual acquaintances of ours, it's that even though, you know, you've been in the hardcore scene for years, you're a big fan of music that's way outside the whole hardcore and urban music hemisphere. And I always find it pretty interesting to talk to musicians who play a certain style of music, but yet mainly listen to maybe some other genres that are nowhere near the same style of music that they play in their bands. How difficult is it for you, in your case, you know, with hardcore, since obviously that's what you're known for playing? How difficult is it to allow those other influences, or not allow, I should say, those other influences for what you listen to sort of seep into the music you're making for, like, say, when you were with Madball or any of the hardcore bands you played with?
I think that the more music you listen to, the better musician you're going to be. Like the more variety you listen to, the better musician you're going to be. It's almost like inbreeding. If you listen to nothing but metal and you sit down and try to write a metal song, there's no variety in there. You're going to basically just be copied. You know, if you look at the trailblazers of any genre, they weren't listening to their style alone. They were listening to, you know, everything. There was always something outside their world that they blended in that made it that unique. I was pure metal and hardcore up until about 18 years old. And then I discovered the rest of the world. You know, it's like, you know, you have to open your mind. You can only be, you know, when I first discovered metal and hardcore, it was, you know, it was incredible. It changed my world. But then as I got, you know, started to become a little bit of an adult, you know, I started to listen to some more classic rock. some more punk came in. I got a little more into punk stuff in my 20s. And then by my mid-20s, I was, full on, like I kind of revisited all the pop stuff that had gone on when I was a kid that I hated because it wasn't Slayer. And, all that stuff rounds you out as a musician. You listen to songwriting of any genre. Writing a song is kind of very similar no matter what kind of music you're writing. So I'm a big believer that the more you listen to, the more education you get on music, and it makes you that much better of a songwriter, that much better of a producer, just that much better even of a music listener, even if you're not in a band. If you're only listening to one kind of music, you're really limiting yourself.
Sure. Yeah, no, I totally agree, man. So let's go ahead. We're going to talk a little bit about Madball. When you first joined the band back in the early 2000s, and I remember when you did, it wasn't too long after they had initially disbanded, which obviously didn't last too long, which is a great thing. And it sort of marked sort of like that second incarnation of Madball at that time. And I believe I think you were still playing possibly with Scarhead around that time. And I know one of the things about Madball was that they had gone through, several guitarists since they had broke out of New York City and became more of a global act. Was one of the reasons that they did get back, together for that second incarnation, was it due to the fact that they were able to, find stability at guitar spot with someone like yourself? And did you feel any pressure at that time, filling in those shoes of such, heralded, really great guitarists they had like Matt Henderson?
Yeah, I definitely felt pressure. I'll tell you that.
Okay.
They were a band that, when I was in Scarhead, we did a bunch of tours together. And to me, Madball was like the gold standard. I was like,
sure.
These guys every night bring an incredible live show. They're tight. There's a show. It's not just a bunch of guys getting up there playing. It really had showed me like, wow, this is the level that you need to be at. And so just to give you a little of the history, they had Matt was the steady guy for years and years. And then Matt left the band, I think in like 98. And they went through a couple of lineup changes that got him a little frustrated. And then there were some other problems going on. And when I came into the picture, they were basically done with it. Hoya and Freddie were frustrated with the way things had been going. And the plan was, that's it, we're done. They're breaking the band up. And I remember reaching out to Hoya, and I was like, hey, man, I feel for you. I'm sorry to hear what you guys are going through, but I told them, I got time. If you guys need someone to fill in, I'm your man. I can learn this stuff, real fast. It'd be an honor for me to help out. And at first he said, no, we're done. We're hanging it up. And then a little while went by, and he reached out to me again. He says, all right, we're going to do one last tour. We're going to do a Europe tour. And then we're breaking the band up. And he says, we'd love it if you could help us out. So that was the first thing I did with him. I did a European tour in the spring of 2001, during which that tour we got asked to do CBGB final show, and we got asked to do a Japan run. So we ended up doing those things, and the band ended. And I was just happy to have been a part of the very end of it. The last CB show, we played as a 5-piece where Matt Henderson came up. And we had 2 guitars, which is always fun to play with Matt. And the band broke up. And, I thought it was done. I went on tour with them, and I spent a year I spent a whole tour with them giving interview after interview to these magazines and fanzines, where they were all saying, oh, you're not really breaking up, are you? This is just to say, whatever. And they were like, no, we're really done. This is it. We're not doing this just for publicity. We're not doing this. So I was convinced. I thought it was over. And about a year went by, and I saw Freddie one night at a show at CB's. I think we were H2O show that we were hanging out. And he kind of whispered in my ear. He says, hey, don't sleep on Madball. And I was like, whoa, like really? It blew me away.
Sure.
And so I, not to make this into a whole history lesson, but so later on, within a month or so, he reached out and said, hey, we're gonna get the band back together, and I want you to be the guitar player. And it went from there. That was 14, 15 more years.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, speaking of, you and your ball, my favorite release that you were on was the album Legacy. But I think The best sounding release though was Empire. That had, that obviously had Jay Weinberg from Slipknot was on drums, and it was produced by Eric Rutan, of course, who's from Morbid Angel and Hate Eternal. Talk about the recording of that record. Do you agree that was the best sounding album of your tenure, or do you think there was another album that was better?
If I had to pick a personal favorite sounding production wise, I think that Hardcore Lives was my favorite.
Okay.
That was the one where it was engineered. The recording was engineered by Ken Susi from Unearth.
Okay.
And it was mixed by Zeus, who had done Legacy and Infiltrate the System.
Sure.
And Zeus did a great job. I think it just by that point, we were on. That was our fourth record since I've been in the band. We were pretty dialed in. We kind of had the method down.
Okay.
We were happy.
Awesome.
Empire was cool working with Rutan because we had toured with Hate Eternal within like 5-6 years before that. So we've known Eric ever since. He's a great guy. He's a huge perfectionist, especially when it comes to guitars. He really pushed me, which was fun. We did it in Florida, so couldn't complain about the weather. Is that my favorite record sound wise? No, I'm glad to hear it's yours. I don't hate it.
It's mine. Yeah.
It's definitely got a unique. I think out of the four that I did, Legacy, Infiltrate, Empire, and Hardcore Lives, it sounds different than the other three.
It does. Yeah.
Freddie sounded like a monster on it. I remember that. His vocals came out awesome on that.
Yeah.
But it was a fun process. We had a good time doing it.
Yeah, no, awesome. And although I love, obviously what you've done with Madball, man, throughout your career, to this day, I still think the best stuff you did was that Ragman EP you guys did on Eulogy back in like 2004 or 3. I mean, it boggles my mind because it was, you guys were a super group there. You had George from, Marauder, had Rig from Madball and Hate, and Bulldog from Earth Crisis. I mean, and not a lot of people really know even about that EP. It's a fucking great EP, man. It's a great record. Obstacles, man, that's a great song. Whatever happened in that project? How did first of all, how did that come about? How did you guys want to doing that? And then how come you guys just kind of never did anything with that again?
That was it. That ended up coming together when I had a lot of that stuff written when Madball was on Hate, that little breakup.
Okay.
And then when we got going again, within a year or so, Freddie and Hoya ended up doing the Hazen Street thing.
That's right. Okay.
Which was the rock project. And when those guys were doing that, Madball was not by any means on a hiatus, but they were focused on Hazen Street for the first, I want to say for like the second half of 2003 and the first, almost all of 2004. So I got together with Rig and started writing that stuff. And we got a lot of it written. And it just kind of came together quick. We got George on vocals. Bulldog, I knew Bulldog from Earth Crisis when we had toured with, it was a tour we did in 1998 that was Earth Crisis, Madball, Hatebreed, Scarhead. And there's like entire books that could be written about that tour.
I'm sure.
And the problem with the books is you have to put names in there, and that ain't going to happen until 3-4 generations have passed when there's nobody around to be incriminated.
Sure.
But we knew those guys, so Bulldog was a good thought. I'm like, that guy's got a great tone. We did that record on Eulogy, and it was it started to kind of come together like, well, if these guys are going to be doing the Hazen Street thing, this will give me and Rig something to do and keep the ball rolling and have some music going on. And then the Hazen Street kind of ran its course. There's a whole story behind that. That record, unfortunately, didn't get the push that it should have. I mean, that was meant to be the next, that was supposed to be a major label smash. Mm-hmm. The songs are incredible. The productions, the performance, everything's great. I just think the label kind of got cold feet about it at the end and didn't push it as hard. Mm-hmm. But by the end of 2004, we were back full tilt writing for the first for Legacy, which would become Legacy, and that was that. Madball was my first priority. We put the Ragman out. We did a you know, a little bit of touring around the States. We went to Europe once for a couple of shows, but we were back with Madball, so that kind of put it on the shelf, and it's been on the shelf ever since.
No question. Well, Mitz, you know, as a production guy, I'm more fascinated these days with production than anything. Not because, you know, it's a skill, and I don't think people realize that it's a skill. I think a lot of people think that it's you twist a couple knobs and you turn the volume up and then that's it, you know.
No.
That being said, it is a skill, and there's a lot of idiosyncrasies that goes into making a quality recording of anybody, whether it's a country solo guy or a hardcore band or a metal band, etc. For you as a production guy, does it bother you to no end that the world is more and more by the day leaning towards streaming, where they're just hearing a low quality image of the work that you know, I mean, legitimately could spend months or even a year producing?
Yeah.
Is that bothersome?
I mean, I think the quality of that stuff has come up, though. You know, I mean, I remember when satellite radio first came on, it sounded like, you know, it was really boxy and sounded paper thin. A lot of, I remember, you know, YouTube and all that stuff, when you first used to post songs up, they didn't sound as good. Now you listen to YouTube videos, and they're pretty much on par with your streaming stuff like Spotify, Apple. But, you know, you're mixing to what you're getting used on. I mean, you know, how much stuff in the 50s and 60s was played on AM radio. Yeah. You know, the quality of something is a big part. But, you know, I'm more interested in the production as far as the performance goes. You know, if the energy's there and the songs are slamming and everything's like translating the way you want it to, it shouldn't matter whether you listen to it on your phone or whether you listen to it on a $5,000 set of speakers.
Sure. And you may not even think about this, but it's just the sickness in my brain that always thinks about this kind of stuff. Do you produce in a way, almost forward thinking to how the medium is going to change, meaning that you really focus on the individual tracks of every little thing, because the medium might change later to where having better production might lead to an actual better sounding, like a remix, because everybody remixes and remasters now, you know, but a lot of it was because there just wasn't as good of a sound, where now it seems like the only reason you would do that is because the technology gets better.
I think the playing field is very level now. If you listen to the records that I grew up on, I'll say hardcore is the perfect example. If you listen to any band that's a cornerstone of the genre right now, their demo sounded like shit. Their first record sounded like a bunch of guys that went into a studio and had no idea what they were doing, and was produced by somebody that had no idea what hardcore was. And then by their second and third record, they started to come together. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because to get into a real studio back in those days cost, you know, $50,000. Nowadays, you can make an incredible sounding record on a budget that's a tenth of that. So I think that you've got bands now making their first record that sounds just as good as what their third or fourth record will sound like. But again, production as far as audio quality, to me, is secondary to performance. If you can get that magical performance down, if you got the drummer and the bass player and the guitar player, they're locked in, and then the singers singing some magic, it's got to have that emotion he's got coming out of him, that once in a lifetime performance out of somebody, and you get that all going at the same time, man. I almost don't care if the production's, those guys' record sounds better. I don't give a shit. Yeah, obviously you want it to sound up to important than the science.
Sure. Yeah, no, I totally agree. So, hey, Mitch, before we wrap things up, I know you've got an announcement you want to make to the audience tonight, so why don't you go ahead and do that?
Sure. So I haven't released anything other than that Sepultura thing. And then since I left the band back, as you said, I think it's 3 years ago now, I've got something coming out. I should say a buddy of mine, guitar player for Entombed AD, my buddy Guilherme Miranda, he plays for Entombed AD, which is like the next generation from Entombed, because those guys kind of had a little dispute. So one guy's got the name, and then my friend LG's got Entombed AD.
Mm-hmm.
So Guilherme reached out to me this summer and asked if I wanted to play on a project. He's like, we want to do something. We've got a bunch of guys I'm thinking of, but you were the first person that, I asked for it, or maybe the second or whatever. So we've got a project coming out, and it's not a cover like other stuff that like the Sepultura thing. This is original. It's called Dark Times Collaboration. It's me. It's Guilherme from Entombed AD. It's Chris, bass player from Unearth. It is a drummer named Jono Garrett, who I just met through this project. And so me and Guilherme play guitar. That's the bass. That's the drummer. And we brought in a singer. So another band I produced recently is a band called Eternal Struggle from Tel Aviv. That's a story I didn't actually get a chance to bring up. Band I produced from Tel Aviv, and when we had this song going around for this thing, Guilherme asked me what would be a good, if I had any ideas for a singer. So we're using Ori Frank from Eternal Struggle. It's a new band coming out of Israel. He sang on it. And Guilherme also asked a hip hop guy from Brazil, this guy Phantom DK. So he does like a little verse on it. It's one song right now. We may do more in the future. We're going to release the song within a couple of weeks, and there's going to be a video as well. And that'll be the first new music that I've been a part of that I've released since Madball. So,
man, awesome, man. Well, definitely look forward to hearing that. Where can we check that out? Well, you don't have a specific date just yet, or
nothing just yet? But after today, I'm going to post some stuff about it. We're in the process of uploading it to streaming things, hoping to get it onto Spotify and Apple Music. And we've got a video in the works. We shot a video that was originally supposed to be kind of like the behind the scenes of everyone just playing in there. Because the interesting thing about the project I didn't get into, we did it completely remotely. Nobody jammed in a room. It was Guilherme had the idea for the project. He said, do you have any ideas? I said, I got a piece of music that I've been throwing around for a while. I sent it to him. He's like, oh, I love this. He's like, let me add on to it. So me and him wrote the song together, and then we made a click track for it. We sent it to Texas, where the drummer and the bass player live. The drummer played in a studio along with a reference track, sent that back to us. We did our guitars in our houses. We all did it at home. Basically, everybody contributed their parts individually, remotely. And then we sent it to a studio in Germany. This guy, Christian Kohler, and his studio is called Kohlkeller Studios. I believe they're outside of Frankfurt. And he did a mix for us, and it came out unbelievable, like way better than we ever thought. So everybody's going to be credited. You'll read the whole story. I'm going to start posting some stuff about it as of tonight. And I'm hoping that we'll do another couple of songs. It's, everyone's got their own bands. I got music in the works for further down the road. But this is something that we may, drop a song every now and again, and it should be some fun.
Yeah. Oh, awesome, man. Well, we can't wait to check that out. It sounds great, man. And definitely when you guys do release, something, whatever, we could always definitely have you back on to talk more about it too.
That would be awesome.
Sure, if you're interested. Okay. Yeah,
absolutely.
Awesome. All right, Mitch. Well, once again, man, thanks so much for coming on, and good luck with everything. We'll hopefully talk to you soon, bud.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good
All
night.
right. Take care, buddy. Take care, bro.
Here.
All right.
All right. There we go, Mitch.
There we
was
go,
fun.
Mitch. Oh, yeah. That's a lot of fun, man. It was great talking,
And new musical project announcement.
Exactly, right?
You're on Aftershocks.
No, absolutely, man. Absolutely. All right, man. So, yeah, that was great talking to Mitch. And, yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing that. Sounds great, man. Like you said, new music, anything new coming out these days, especially from, guys that we've been, guys and gals that we've been listening to and following for years is, I can never get enough of that. It doesn't matter, what it is or who they play with. It's just, we love it.
And
Great.
he's, I think we grossly did him disservice with Mitz. We could have had him on for another half hour if we didn't have a great guest tonight, because geez, he's got stories for days.
Well, yeah, no, he definitely does. But we've got another guy coming up who's going to, I'm sure, tell us a lot of stories for days too. One of the things we were talking about that we wanted to focus a little bit on hardcore on this Aftershocks, but we also wanted to focus on a lot of the stoner, doom, and the desert rock type of stuff. We're big fans of that. That's style of music as well. Probably, especially these days, obviously we're not spring chickens anymore. We get a little older. It seems like the that kind of stuff, a little bit more of the slower tempo stuff is resonating more with me than it was when I was in my youth. I'm sure the same for you, even though I still love all that stuff. I'm a big fan of the stoner and, it's funny with the word stoner. I know a lot of the musicians hate that term stoner rock, but it is what it is, man.
Yeah. And, dude, I am such a fan. I know, as a Caius fan, I was like, always a John Garcia guy, always. And I actually, with all the interviews that I've done over the years, thousands of interviews, I did not get to interview John Garcia all the way until Vista Chino came out.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Never met him, tried to meet him, even to the effect of went and saw shows, and then for whatever reason didn't meet him at the shows, which was bizarre because I was such a fan. But man, getting to interview him for Vista Chino was like, that was like holy grail territory. That was like when I first interviewed Dio or whatever for me, so I'm a huge fan. And not only Garcia, but I mean, obviously all those bands, whether it's Fu Manchu or, even bands like the Watchers that are young and new, that have that same sound. It reminds me so much of that Bay Area thrash thing, not musically, but in, the excitement level of that music has gotten so good and so strong. And I mean, you remember this too. And I'm sure Greg can probably remember this as well when we bring him on here in a second. That kind of music for the longest time was you kind of had to listen to it through shitty sound for years and years and years. You would get that music and the music was so great that you would deal with bad sound on bad cassettes or whatever through tape trading. 2010 or so on, all of a sudden it got to be well produced, which has given it, in my mind, a brand new life. And man, I couldn't be more happier than getting these records now from these bands, because that style of music just sounds so good recorded now. Yeah. It's a good time to be a fan of desert rock, so to speak.
I agree. I totally agree. Well, let's go ahead. Think about Greg as we bring him on here in a second. He not only does the stoner stuff, he was also involved in the hardcore and crossover scene as well back in the day. So let's welcome our next guest here, Mr. Greg Saenz. What's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm doing good. You guys, thanks for having me.
Oh, man, thanks for coming on, man. When I was sort of preparing, to do this interview, it was really tough, Greg, to try to narrow down really what to talk to you about tonight, man, because you've been a part of so many bands I'm a fan of, big fan of. And obviously we wish we had about 2 hours at least here to talk to you about all the stuff you've been involved with, man. But what we'll do is we'll start out with your most recent band that you've been with, the Band of Gold, with the legendary Caius frontman John Garcia and his third solo record, man. What a great record that is, man. We're both huge fans of that record. Just, obviously John, just his over the years and yours as well. And so I guess just to start things off here, why don't you just tell us a bit about what's going on with the band, if anything at all? Because I do remember reading that you guys really enjoy each other's company, from what I read, so much that you wouldn't be able to function if you guys were emailing recorded tracks back and forth with you. I mean, has that now obviously changed a bit because of you really have no other choice? Or and is there anything in the pipelines, or are you guys just sort of waiting until live music returns before you sort of get the ball rolling again?
We're waiting for live music to return. Okay. I mean, we're always writing, and we're all good buddies, and that's part of the reason why we go out and do this as well. I mean, sure. John could have many people in his band, but he picked some guys that all got along. So whether we're doing stuff or not, we're hanging out, we're communicating and writing music. And when John says go, and then we go. but
Mhm.
you know, John just bought a little fishing boat, and he's having a good time with this whole hiatus. I don't think he's too worried right now.
Sure.
But we
Yeah.
did. I just today I got an email from John. We've got an announcement coming out tomorrow.
Very cool.
Some stuff going on next year over in Europe,
Right.
and there'll be some cool bands. I can't say because it's
Sure.
officially announced tomorrow, but
Got it.
I was stoked to see that. And yeah, man, it's fun. It's
Yeah.
fun to jam with John and continue the Caius legacy that people really want to hear. You
Sure.
know?
Yeah.
And I'm stoked that you guys love the record.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
That was a no pressure thing. You know, John wanted to make a simple rock record, and we all wanted to get on board with that. Didn't want to reinvent the wheel in the stoner rock world, or, you know, create this epic thing. We just wanted to keep it simple, get out on the road, and ended up making a if I may say so myself, a fine rock record. Chris Goss mixed it and made it sound cool.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think it's more just a little than fine. I'll be honest with you. It's really awesome, man. Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be, you know.
I know you. I know. No need to be gracious, Dad.
Cool.
I
like
speaking,
it.
I mean, speaking of John, man, I mean, it seems like, you know, his voice, man, to me, it just gets better and better as he ages. I mean, especially when you see him live. And, you know, I'm actually more of a fan of his voice now than I was when he was with Caius, because with Caius, it was a little bit, his voice was sort of in the background, you know, it wasn't really too high in the mix. As it was when he started doing his own, you know, projects. The only thing that frustrates me with him is sort of like you said right here. Over the course of his career, he's so unpredictable in terms of when he's going to release new music, and more importantly, who he's going to do it with. I mean, he's got so many different projects. It's like unpredictable what he's going to do next, which I guess at the same time, it's kind of cool and fun to not know what he's going to do, to be surprised. But like, you know, like we were saying before, I mean, there's no reinventing the wheel. I mean, whether all his projects, whether it's Unita, I mean, Slow Burn, Hermano, Vistacino, or obviously the stuff now you guys are doing with the Band of Gold, none of it really strays too far from that desert rock sound that he and obviously Caius created back in the early 90s that became such a, you know, a global phenomenon. It does seem, though, that with the four of you, it feels like, you know, this isn't just now another project. I sort of get a sense that he can do, you know, what he wants creatively with the, you know, the rest of you guys, with the Band of Gold. And like I said, it seems like you guys are really tight on a personal level as well. So do you think, in your opinion, you think he's finally settled down now, doing his solo stuff with, you know, the four of you, and thus maybe there's no need to go back to those other projects any longer? What do you think about that?
I believe so. I mean, of course, rock and roll always calls, and opportunities come up, and sometimes the need to please the fans will outweigh everything. As for now, I know he's happy with just his solo band. Mm-hmm. I know this because a lot of times when we tour and we'll be in on interviews, and he gets asked what his plans are. And it's kind of funny because we're sitting there as John Garcia and the Band of Gold, and they're saying, well, what are your plans? And I could see the look on his face like, well, this is my plan. This is what I'm doing. What do you mean? Mm-hmm. If they would just get to the question and say, when are you going to get Caius back together? You know, right? So it's just beat around the bush.
Sure.
I'm sure that's very frustrating for him, but, and now I'm straying away and forgot the darn question, but
no, just basically, I just wanted, I mean, in your opinion, do you think that he's now really happy with just the Band of Gold and what you guys are doing, where he might not have to worry about doing any of the projects? Like you said, he's just going to stick to his solo, probably, right?
I think so. You know, I know Josh Homme did an interview a few months back, and he was questioned and pressed about a Caius reunion where he didn't actually shut the door on it. Mm-hmm. So then right away, you know, people are asking me or asking everyone around town what's going on with that. We just kind of sit back and wait to hear what happens, and
got it. Okay.
Nothing happened. Haven't heard anything. And when he does turn down projects, I know there's always promoters want to get Vistacino out there, and any form of the old Caius guys, Nick, Brandt,
Sure.
even Scott Reeder and Alfredo, those guys, they've got this built-in thing going that they can run with. But the ultimate, you know, it's like rungs on a ladder. You know, they want to get to the top, and that being a Caius reunion or Queens of the Stone Age. You know, but I think he's happy where he's at, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was to go take on one of those bigger projects, and we would all support him because you know, the more he does with the classics, come back to the solo thing, then that much more fire. You know, it's all relative.
Yeah, you know, the interesting thing though, Greg, is the more talk about that stuff, I actually think creates the less interest in it. Just because the, you know, the more you talk about anything and it doesn't happen, it just kind of, it's defeatist. Where I think if people pay attention to what he's been doing, I'll say since 2013, you know, since right after Vistacino, the records have been very diverse and very different. I mean, just even the Band of Gold record that you did compared to the Coyotes record that he did before it, that could be two totally different guys, both named John Garcia, and you almost wouldn't know because one's, you know, very acoustic and one is, you know, obviously a band type of a thing. For you personally, as a member of the band, are you kind of, you know, do you wish that people would just stop asking the question until, if, believe me, everybody will know if Caius decides to get back together in whatever form. Everybody will know. So for you as a musician that's making great music with him right now, is it frustrating that pipe dream of something that may never happen is always the first question in people's mind?
It for a while it may have been, I'll admit, but you got to remember, you know, a solo act is, it's a little harder to push, you know, when you've got a mammoth thing behind you like Caius. And you know, as a music fan, I know if I go to see the Vince Neil solo band, you know, I want to hear Too Fast for Love, and I want to hear, you know, I want to hear the Motley Crue classics. And so you can't get frustrated about it, because every time we do a Caius song or do 2/3 of a Caius set, there's nothing but smiles and tears and vocals and screaming. And at the end of the day, we're not there to sell a product. It'd be nice to sell our songs, but like having that behind you, then you know what you got to do. You got to perform it and respect it and do it the way they want to hear it. And, that's kind of my vibe on it, you know.
That makes sense. Well, Greg, talk a little bit about your career, because anybody that's familiar with your career, and the first question is how did you end up in this desert rock band? Because that's just not what you're known for at all. So how did you know, get here from your career, which has been a very different path?
I moved to the desert in 1999. Did I say 9 3 times? I moved here in 99, and I was going to start a band, or going to join a band with Jay Younger from White Zombie. That was how that happened. I was living in the Bay Area, and my brother-in-law at the time, who I was in a band with in the 90s, was living in the desert. And he got word from Tony Tournay, who is the drummer for Fatso Jetson, legend rock, desert rock band. They worked together. Tony told Dave that Jay was looking for a drummer. I ended up moving out here, and we went out to LA for about 3 or 4 months and jammed with Jay. it didn't work out. And then here I was in the desert, and I started seeking out people to play with.
Okay.
And I was lucky. I met Arthur Say from Unita. I met my good buddy Mike Pygmy, who plays in Band of Gold. And I was out here almost a year. Then I got a call to join the Dwarves, audition for the Dwarves.
Okay.
So I was up in the Bay Area. I come out here. The J thing didn't work out, and I fell in love with the desert in the process. I came out here kicking and screaming. My wife at the time, she wanted to move here, and I was in the Bay Area. I was in heaven. So,
Right.
but fell in love with the desert. I went desert, and 20 years, I've met some cool people, some key people. And, you know, the John thing was through my bandmate, Mike Pygmy, the bass player. He got hooked up and called me up and told me, you're going to come in and audition. It's going to be fun. It was right after John made his first solo record.
Okay.
And that's how I got hooked up with John. I went in and played Green Machine, and
nice.
Waited a couple weeks, and John called and said, let's go on the road.
Nice.
In a bus.
Very cool. Nice.
I had never toured on a bus before. So
really?
Oh,
like,
wow. Oh my God. Yeah, let's go. Bus.
Nice.
It was awesome.
Nice. Awesome, man.
It's really amazing how simple it sounds. You know, people think that it's like this big thing, and you're like, yeah, I got a call and then I'm on the road. You know, it just sounds so simple.
I've been very fortunate. I mean, I don't know why. I've always worked a job in between going on the road. And, you know, there was a time in the 90s when I really wanted to do it full time, but reality hits. And, you know, if you want to do it and love it, you can't expect too much from it. You know?
Sure.
That's it. Take what you can get. And so I've just been fortunate, man, with the Dwarves to go out with those guys and John. And, but the desert thing, just meeting the right people and being there at the right time, and not being difficult, you know, you know,
sure.
And respecting it. The Caius fans won't put up with no BS, you know. You got to play it right.
Sure.
And you got to play it like the record. And that's that can be a challenge sometimes, but it's fun, the end result.
No, definitely. Well, Greg, man, let's talk a bit about where you started out, where everything started for you. And that would be obviously with the immensely, as I said earlier, underrated crossover, you know, hardcore thrash band Excel. You know, whole along with bands like Suicidal and Beowulf, Cryptic Slaughter. You know, you guys all made up that core of that LA Venice scene in the mid to late 90s, mid to late 80s. And I mean, I guess I could talk about, you know, that band forever, man. I'm a huge fan, but, you know, I mean, to me, Split Image, The Joke Is on You, just great records. But seemed like, you know, the momentum for Excel sort of just stopped right after, you know, Adam Siegler, the guitarist, joined Infectious Grooves there in the early 90s. Was that the reason why the band sort of fell off the wayside? I mean, did Infectious Grooves essentially take him away from being able to commit full time to the band, or were you guys just sort of just done with that at the time? Because like I said, The Joke's on You. I mean, I think that is one of the most underrated, you know, crossover albums that no one talks about, but everyone should listen to, in my opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. Yeah, we had fun making those records. And as far as, you know, in a nutshell, Mike came in, helped us a lot, started Infectious Grooves, and you can't blame him for wanting the best guitarist, and he wanted Adam.
He was really good at Adam,
in my mind at the time, it was an even exchange. Mike's going to help us out.
Okay.
Mike's going to help us get a deal with, you know, at the time they were with CBS, Epic.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, when Robert Trujillo was in Suicidal at the time, he was they were all behind us. For some reason or another, the guys didn't want to go that route.
Mhm.
I really wanted to, and eventually it came up to where Mike just said to Adam, well, if you want to do something on your own, I'll help you out with that too. Adam came to me and said, do you want to start a band outside of Excel? Because I might be leaving.
Mm-hmm.
And me being a hired gun drum slut, I said, yeah, I'll go with you, man. I'll go with you. Plus, you got to realize at the time, it was 1990, 91, 92. I had heard Rollins Band, I had heard Bad Motor Finger, and I wanted to go in that direction.
Okay.
I wanted some angst and some sludge, and alternative was big, and some of the hard bands, the thrash and the Morbid Angels, and all those guys were advancing so fast. Musically, Slayer and everybody who by the way, I auditioned for Slayer at one point when in Excel.
Very nice.
But that's what happened, and we just told Dan and Sean, with all due respect, let's go with Mike, and they didn't want to, so we did started our own band.
Yeah. Well, before we talk about the band, because I want to talk about that band. I just want to real quick, going back to Excel. Obviously, one of the things that people sort of Excel is, the song "Tapping into the Emotional Void." And that was a song that obviously garnered a ton of notoriety because of its similarities to Enter Sandman.
Sure.
And thus, of course, Kirk Hammett, was accused by many, including, his arch nemesis there, Dave Mustaine, of borrowing heavily from that song. And when you listen to it, you could definitely hear the similarities. There's no doubt. I mean, did you guys ever, because I did remember reading that, the band was looking to possibly take legal action or anything. Was that ever a serious thing, or was that just sort of a silly rumor that went around?
That got bounced around years later when we all got old and broke and started thinking about, hey, man, men at work had to pay out, maybe. But at the time, no, we didn't want to do that. We were too punk and too in debt to Metallica being such a huge influence on the band. Honestly, I wouldn't have noticed had somebody, not pointed it out to me.
Gotcha.
And unfortunately, our manager at the time did a piece in the LA Times about it.
Right.
Which is kind of passive aggressive way of saying, well, they could sue, but they're not going to.
Right.
But boy, what an interest it's sparking in the band. And they kind of used it as a try to get the labels to come after us.
Got it. Okay.
I think it backfired.
Really?
Yeah. I think we became a bruised banana that was potentially going to take on the Metallica monster.
Gotcha.
And that was another reason. It's like, what? Everybody around us is getting signed and nobody's touching us. What's going on?
Yeah.
So, but to this day, I'll be out with Garcia and I'll meet people that I'll be working with for about a month. And then 3 days later, they'll come up and go, what? You were in Excel? Dude, I'm a skater and I used to skate to your band, and wow.
Nice.
And all over South America, everywhere. The love from Excel is incredible.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine. Let's talk real quick about that band you said when you and Adam left to start, when you went with, after Excel, you guys did your own 3-piece band with My Head. And it's great. Yeah. And I remember, and like you said, it had more of that alternative grunge, type of sound that was real big at the time. And I remember buying that CD. It was the promo version of it. It was like in the 99-cent, bin or whatever it was. It was one of those gems I found, in the 99-cent bin, because I knew you guys were in the band. And dude, it's such a really awesome album. Another great, band that you were in that really didn't really, that's got overlooked. And you guys were on Capitol Records. I mean, you were on a major label. Everything was going well for the band, and then all of a sudden, she never heard of anything from them again. And it looked like and to me, I don't know if it was it the reason why you guys, kind of, I guess, disbanded or just didn't take it any further. What did it have anything to do with the fact that, I know Adam, I mean, I don't even know what happened to him. You don't hear about him anymore. I know he kind of went into more of an indie rock sort of direction. Yeah. Was it because he just sort of lost interest in that hard rock, type of stuff? Or so just talk a bit about that, that whole project you guys did.
In hindsight, I think Adam was under a lot of pressure.
Okay.
And that was a big reason why my hand ended. Plus, we were supposed to be on Imago Records initially.
Okay.
That was the label that Rollins was on.
Mm-hmm.
They folded before our release came out.
Okay.
The A&R guy from Imago went to Capitol and took us with him.
Oh, okay.
So we got on Capitol through our A&R man, Matt Aberly, God bless him. But we were Matt's thing.
Okay.
Capitol was already busy with Everclear, Marcy Playground, Luscious Jackson.
Right.
Okay.
And we just weren't breaking. We didn't have a radio pop single. I think we fell more into the stoner fuzz thing.
Yeah, totally.
Being in the early 90s before, but being on a major label, we were pressured to make hits. Couldn't give Capitol an experimental Grand Funk Railroad revisited, which is what we really wanted to do, but we had to go in a direction that, we didn't expect to go in, or at least Adam. Plus, Adam being an incredible artist, that was the direction that he decided to go in, becoming a set designer. That's what Adam's doing now.
Oh, okay.
He's in Hollywood, at least, well, not now with this COVID thing, but Adam took his art with him and started a career doing that. He's got a company with his wife.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
Adam went on to play with the Eels.
Right.
Yeah.
Played bass for the Eels. Had a California pop band called the Blondes.
Okay.
They put out a couple European releases. But now, I talk to Adam from time to time. He has zero interest in doing Excel. He turned down the offer to do an Infectious Screws reunion.
Okay.
He's just happy doing his thing.
Sure.
Cool.
That happens. Well, Greg, I wanted to ask you about, and this could be bullshit for all I know. I just happened to see it when I was getting ready to talk to you tonight. Did you do some sort of vocals or backing vocals with Creator at one point?
We did.
Okay.
Our producer for the Joke's on You, Randy Burns.
Okay.
Also did the first Suicidal record.
Sure.
He was doing Creator after us, and I got a call from Dan one day, and he says, "Hey, Randy called, and he's got Creator in the studio. They want to hang out, and they've got some pot, and let's go down back to the Music Grinder where we'd recorded our record." And I was all in, so we went down there, recorded 2 backup vocal tracks on 2 of their tracks.
Okay.
2 songs, hung out with them, got to know them. See, Dan speaks fluent German.
Okay.
So that was another reason why Dan was going to be there to help translate through the recording that day. And I was just lucky enough to go along. I think that was the first time I smoked pot with tobacco in it.
Okay. The European style. Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I got this terrible tobacco head rush. And then there's 4 German guys going, what did they give me, man? Who are these guys? It was a lot of fun. And to this day, I still get asked that. Or through social media, I get tagged in Creator sometimes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It really is. It really is interesting that, again, these days you're known for desert rock. You're probably the one desert rock guy that's appeared on an all-time classic, German thrash record.
Extreme Aggression.
Yeah.
That's a classic, man. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. Yeah. It's you never think, who thought that genre was going to mean so much these days. I'm so happy it does. A whole new generation picking up on Excel and Creator Records from the 80s.
No doubt, man. That's great. Well, people should be picking up is the Band of Gold, John Garcia and the Band of Gold. That record, and not saying it just because you're on with us, because I've been pimping that record for a year and a half trying to get
thanks, man. Awesome
to hear it, man. It's there's two reasons why I love it, and I know we need to wrap this up pretty quick, but I love it. One, because it does have it does find John reaching back to his roots, but I love it most of all, and we sort of touched on this right before we brought you on. The production is beyond about anything that's out there. The production is so clean and so crisp. You can hear what you guys are doing. It has the fuzz, but it doesn't have so much fuzz that it sounds like it was recorded in a basement. It sounds really good, which makes it just a stellar record, man. I'm sure you guys had to be thrilled when you heard it the first time.
It was recorded at our recording studio, our rehearsal studio up in Yucca Valley, and took a board in there. Robbie Waldman and Steve Feldman, they recorded it. Brought their awesome microphones and their processors and all their stuff and plugged it in, recorded it there, mixed it, and then decided we wanted something more. Chris Goss's name came up, and thought, let's throw it at Chris, see if he's available. He was, and I think that's a big reason why it's got that sheen, that Masters of Reality grit. Something, and that classic sound. And of all the records I made, it's the most classic rock sounding I've ever done.
Oh wow!
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, everything else is thrash.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, and then you throw in Yawning Man on top of that, and you're really now even dialing it back a little less as well, too. Yeah.
That was those guys needed a drummer. Their drummer wasn't available, and that was a labor of love. I figure if I'm going to jam with desert guys, shoot, Mario being the Godfather and John being the voice. I'm pretty stoked with
you're desert rock royalty there.
I try to surround myself. I'm with these guys.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
they don't know me. I just I'm with them. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, come on.
Nice,
but it's fun.
Sure. Well, Greg, have I know the pandemic has just kind of fucked everybody up, and it really sucks what it's done as far as killing the industry. With this time off, have you guys even contemplated making any music yet, or are you just gonna wait it out, or where are you guys at? Maybe not touring wise, but creatively.
We had a project that was thrown at us. We were going to do a video, live performance, outdoors, out in the open desert. But it seems right now there's a kind of a couple of those are coming out right now. One being a Yawning Man. And there's another one that's coming out soon. Earthless and Nebula, and
nice
project that Brent and Nick have. They're going to be a video, outdoor video.
Sure.
So we had that going, and now we're thinking, well, maybe we won't do that because everybody's doing that. Not everybody, not knocking it, but that was kind of what we wanted to do. We'll get other ideas going for a video type thing, and we want to record a record. We've got music, all of us write. But like I said, with this COVID thing, we've just been kind of just playing phone tag and avoiding the whole like, all right, now's the time. I honestly, we're kind of enjoying it. We're not freaking out.
Sure.
Okay.
We understand that things get postponed, so we're taking advantage of it, because
good.
when it
Nice.
rains, it pours, and when it hits, we'll be, we'll be ready. Yeah, just now. There's so much going on out in the world,
Right.
Is it that important?
Sure.
Here I'm getting deep.
It's all good. That's what this is all for. Yeah.
But yeah, we definitely, we talk about it all the time. We just talk.
Right.
Hell yeah. Awesome, man.
We talk good talk though.
Hell yeah. Well, hey, Greg, now we really appreciate you coming on and talk. Like I said, we could sit here forever and talk to you about all the stuff you've been involved with, man. So definitely, we look forward to, obviously anything new you got coming up in the future with John Garcia and the Band of Gold. And and when you guys do, we'd definitely love to have you back on, talk more about it and talk more about your history, man. Because, you got quite the background there, and really impressive. And yeah, it was great talking to you, meeting you, and good luck with everything. And
hey, I appreciate it, man. Yeah, I got lots more where that came from. So give me a call sometime. I'd love to come back.
Awesome, appreciate it. All right, Greg, take care, bud. Have a good one. Take care.
Bye.
All right, there we
Right.
go.
That was fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, like I said, he's been involved with so many great bands, and he still is, obviously. Yawning Man and John Garcia, and great stuff, man. Great conversation, and it's been really great for, I'm sure, you too. But it's like, talking, to these guys who, just talking to him about his band, My Head. Not a lot of people know who they are. But like I said, they were a solid band, and one of those ones that, I don't want to say fell through the cracks, because he obviously explained what happened with everything. But there's so many of those bands that just, these great records that came out, whether it was in the 80s and 90s or even the 70s, and it's just so many of them fell through the cracks. It's just great,
right,
to just revisit them and talk about it and stuff. And I'm sure obviously they're glad to do that just as much as we are too. Obviously it's their art. Yeah,
dude, I love hearing these stories like he was telling about the Creator thing. I love hearing that behind the scene, because I didn't really do a good job of explaining it, but it really did strike me as odd when I saw that he was associated with Extreme Aggression from Creator. I was like, how in the hell did this guy end up in there? And then to hear the story that it's really about nothing more than hooking up with a band to get some weed, it's like, and then they end up on a record together. It brings some, maybe it takes the legend away a little bit, but it brings like normality to it, because it really does remind you that at its core, all these guys really are just regular guys anyway. The fact that we have records with pictures of their bands and shit in our collections makes it seem like it's this bigger deal, but in the end, it's just a bunch of guys that are, out there, just like if when you go to your job, it's just a bunch of guys with like-minded experiences getting together. So yeah, Greg was great. I love that, man. And much like you, big fan of Excel, obviously a gigantic fan of John Garcia. So, it's like, wow. And we could talk. That guy seems like he has stories for years.
Oh, God. I mean, yeah. He was even the drummer on, Mike Muir's, solo record, Psycho Myco. Yeah. I mean, he's been a part of that whole Venice scene. That whole Venice scene to me is just sort of real interesting, because there's a lot. I mean, Beowulf's a great band. I don't know if you heard much about them. I mean, there's so many good bands that I think the reason probably what happened with that scene and why it was really only Suicidal that really took off out of there. A lot of it probably had to do with just the stigma of, I mean, those Fender's Ballroom and Olympic Auditorium shows where there was a lot of gang violence. Suicidal wasn't allowed to play in the LA area for the longest time. I don't even know if they still are. I'm not sure or not, but they had that whole thing that went down, and it's just it might have scared away a lot of promoters, a lot of obviously venues that didn't want to put on those shows, and thus they weren't able to get their music out as much as they they should have.
Yeah.
Well,
it did.
So,
it's a Another win for Aftershocks. That's what I'll say, because we got to talk to somebody else cool that, you probably wouldn't hear from otherwise.
Exactly. Yeah. And like you said, and the cool thing about him is he's had so many. He started off, like you said, with the punk, the thrash stuff, and now he's playing this real mellow, stuff with, Yoni Man's real mellow psychedelic,
Sure.
desert rock stuff. And, going from the beach to the desert, that's quite the, quite the change, man, Yeah.
No, dude, and it was interesting to hear him. He was like, "Oh, I didn't want to go. I hated the idea of going there. Now I love it."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, the desert is a very interesting place, especially out, in Southern California. It's, I like the desert areas, but it's unique. You know what I mean? My thing, why I'm not a huge fan of the deserts, because where am I going to go see music? You know what I mean? You have to travel down to Southern California. It's a good hour and a half easily, from out in Coachella Valley there, probably even further, about two and a half, about 2 to 2.5 hours. Yeah. In Palm Springs and stuff. So, it is amazing that desert scene, how that kind of just sprouted. I mean, you're talking about such a little geographical area, not a big populated, not very heavily populated. And what they create, I don't know if have you ever seen that that documentary they did on the desert scene at all? Oh yeah, you got to check it out, man. I think it's on Amazon and all the channels.
Okay.
Yeah, you check it out. It's such a cool story how it all started with just these generator parties.
Right.
In the middle of the desert, where there would be like, it'd start off small. Next thing you knew, there was like hundreds of kids coming to these parties. I mean, that's just organic stuff. You know what I mean? That's how you start a scene, and that's stuff you're just never going to see anymore. You couldn't do that these days anyway. I mean, you just wouldn't be able to get away with it, I'm sure.
Right.
Bringing a generator out there and having 4 or 5 bands just plug in and go nuts,
Yeah.
But it's such a unique, that documentary, you got to check it out. It's called the Low Desert Sound, I believe it's called.
Yeah, no, I definitely need to see that, because that's that's these days. It's funny, man, because I don't know about you, but I go in spurts musically.
Okay.
And right now, this is my spurt, is the desert scene.
Okay.
I just love it, man. I can't get enough of it. And there's, none of them are big bands, but there's a lot of them that are out there right now. There's a lot of new bands making that kind of music, and just, there's just this onslaught of great talent that's out there.
Yeah.
And it just keeps coming. And it's like, thank God, because, I chose the right time to kind of pivot from that. I was listening to a lot of, what do they call that? Metalcore, I guess, for the last 10 years or so. It's all been, every offshoot band of Killswitch Engage.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and I'll tell you what record changed it was Spiral Arms. When the Spiral
really?
Arms
Okay.
Freedom,
wow.
When that record came out, and I also was really, really big into Vista Chino, and what was the other band? It had that guy, Arian Black was the singer.
Arian Black. I'm trying to think.
What is the name of that band? Now I feel like a dick because I brought it up.
I do that all the time, man. I think we all do that.
I can't think of what the band is, but it's I can't think of it. But it was a band on Nuclear Blast that was they had that song. God damn, now I'm gonna just look it up. I know this is not compelling live TV or live radio, whatever, but whatever.
It's okay. We're waiting for our next guest anyway. We've got someone supposed to come on real quick, so we're
Scorpion Child.
Oh, Scorpion Child, yeah, the guys from Austin, Texas, absolutely, yeah.
But they made a couple of records that had that sound as well. And
that first record,
both of those records,
both of them, yeah.
But that onslaught, they all came around the same time, between like about 2013 and 2015, 16, somewhere in there. There was like 4 or 5 of those bands that all came out at once, and I just was like, yeah, I'm on it now, man. This is it really made me pivot to that kind of music, and it's great. And then Garcia started doing solo stuff. His solo records have been really good, and the Band of Gold, obviously, we both love that. So
absolutely.
It's good stuff.
No, not with you, man. I really started getting into that stuff. It was probably like you said. I think I got just tired of the metalcore stuff. There was nothing sounding really new. This was probably around 2000 and I'd say 8 or 9.
Yeah.
And that's what I remember I picked up, and it's another, you want to talk about another great documentary called Such Hawks, Such Hounds. I don't know if you've heard of that one. That's another one that focuses a lot on the stoner stuff and the doom. It kind of encompasses the psychedelic doom and stoner.
Sure.
Mostly within the US, I believe. They feature like Atomic Bitchwax, Earthless, all those bands. Yeah. And I remember, Matt Pike was in there, High on Fire. He was on there. They talk about Sleep and how, just sort of how the scene started with the guys from Caius and Sleep. That's how it sort of, really resonated back in the early 90s. And when I saw that, because I was looking for something new at that point, I was just over whatever Mello was bringing. I was just like, man, I'm not feeling it anymore. And when I saw that documentary, I just sort of picked it up, at the record store. And I was just like, I want to find some documentaries. I love watching them. Just took a shot. It said it was the hard rock scene in the United States. That could be anything.
Yeah.
And then when I saw it, and they did a great job. They would show a lot of the bands. Like they featured a lot of bands. And one of the band that really caught my eye and attention was Earthless. I mean,
okay, yeah.
I mean, that band, man, I just remember watching that going, what is this? That this is phenomenal, man. And I guess what it made me realize was that I guess I realized, I was ready for something a little more just rock, maybe a little bit less, a little less metal, just a little more hard rock, maybe going back to some of the roots, the classic rock roots kind of, music, whether it be Sabbath stuff or Zeppelin, whatever it is, that kind of influence. And this documentary, man, I just found so many bands on there. And then that was it. I was just, once I started, finding these bands, the Earthlesses, like I said, and later on, obviously Scorpion Child and The Sword and, all these great bands, Orange Goblin, even going, I mean, I knew them from back in the day, but they were still going strong. To me, their best album came out about 8 years ago. And then, I just kind of, like you, man, I just got so entrenched with the whole, stoner stuff. And I haven't really, I still love it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is I loved it back in the, I was on board with the earliest Caius stuff, Circus and, those types of records, obviously the Fu Manchu stuff. Never really dug Queens too much. I always found Queens to be just this.
I'm with you, man. I'm not a huge Queens guy, I'm not huge.
Didn't dig them as much, but the one, and here in Cleveland, we had a kind of a, I don't want to say desert rock because they were obviously here in the Midwest, but we had a sound that was the same sound, bands like Red Giant and Abdullah and stuff, which had some notoriety nationally, but not a ton. But the problem always was, and I sort of referenced it when we were talking to Greg, that the production was always just shit. It was like you would get these tapes, they would give us tapes back in the day and I would listen to them and I would love the music. I mean, absolutely love the tunes, but they just sounded so bad that, you'd put it in your car and your speakers would just warble because the sound was not in a good way, not in a loud thumping way, but just in a that kind of a sound coming out of your speakers where it was unlistenable if you turned it loud.
Sure.
And it made it hard to be a fan of that kind of music for a long time. And, now all these bands have seemingly figured out how to not lose the grit, but record it better.
Sure.
And that was always, I think they always recorded it shitty because they wanted to have that grime or whatever you want to call it, that fuzz, but it always led to bad recordings where now even the Caius stuff. I mean, I don't know if you think that too, but I think those early Caius records sound terrible.
Well, dude, it was funny when you were talking, about that to Greg. Yeah. My first thought was the early Caius records because, like I said, John Garcia's voice was so muddled, so in the background. I mean, he's got such an amazing voice. The thing is, I understood because the music. I mean, with Josh's guitar, he plays it through a bass amp,
right?
Which is what created that sort of unique, really deep, heavy bottom.
Right.
But yeah, I'm with you. I never, to be quite honest, when I first heard Caius back in the day, I was not really a fan at all. I was really into obviously the hardcore and the metal and stuff, and I didn't get it back in the day. It wasn't really until, like I said, probably a good, 15 years ago when I started, I put it on again and I was like, whoa, I'm really actually liking this a lot. But I think a lot of it was because when I first heard it back then, the quality of the sound sucked. I remember the first time I heard the video. I saw the video. I had one of those. It was called Rock Video Monthly. It was these video cassettes that this company sent out. It was all these brand new videos, and I guess record companies got involved with them, whatever. And one of the videos was for the Kai's song 1 Inch Man. And I remember it was just such that low, heavy bottom. And I just, because there were people who loved them, and I'm just like, I didn't get it.
Yeah.
It wasn't until later on, till I really, I clambered on to them later on, where I love them now, obviously. But yeah, I agree though that those earlier, albums in that genre, they sounded like total crap.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? And it's definitely a testament to how good the songs were, because the reason that people did gravitate to them was not the records. It was people saw them. And
sure, exactly.
Saw the shows, and the shows were amazing. And when you saw, even the offshoot bands, like I saw Slow Burn, and I mean, I did not like the musical recording that I had of Slow Burn. I thought it was terrible, but man, when I saw it live, it was like, wow, this is blew you away. Yeah, this is why you like this music.
Absolutely.
So I think a lot, and even bands, like the ones I just mentioned, like Red Giant. Red Giant was one of these bands that, their CDs or their tapes or whatever, absolutely were terrible. And it was, we used to do, when I was doing WMMS, we used to do shows with Red Giant, so we liked them.
Oh, okay.
But we would not play. We couldn't play them on the show because the sound was so bad. So we couldn't play them on our radio show, but we would definitely book a show over at the Fantasy Theaters where we used to book them to play. And I mean, it was Motorhead-esque loud. I mean, it was like, you could not stand in front of the stage. You had to kind of step. They had their own security system, which was the loudness of their music, which just pushed you away from the stage. Sure. It was really loud, but man, they put on some great shows. And it was like, I'm still a huge fan of them. I don't know if they're still in existence or not, but if they are, I would love to know of them playing a show, because I'd like to see them again. But of course, I'd like to see anybody play again at this point.
Yeah, I know at this point, I know. Well, you mentioned before, man, Vista Chino, man. When I saw them live, that was phenomenal. That was a very just a vibe too within the whole, in the show with the people. I mean, it was incredible, man. It's to this day still one of my, over the last 10 years, it's got to be one of the top 3 shows I've. It was the aura, and just like you said, you got that stuff live, and that's really the key. It's so much better live than what you're going to get on the on CD or get on streaming or whatever, or the vinyl.
Right.
It's.
Although I will say, in that one case, the Vista Chino album piece is arguably, for me, it's one of my top 10 records of the 2000s.
Of the last 20.
Of the last 20 years. I can't
really.
Cannot stop listening to that record, man. I still listen to it all the freaking time. It's, and I mean, it's Garcia and Brandt. I mean, geez, oh man, as Stone Rock goes, okay, it's two of the biggest names in that. Throw Scott Reeder up there, and then you've got the whole collection. And if I'm not mistaken, Reeder performed or toured with them as well. So
no, it was Mike Dean from Corrosion of Conformity. He was.
I think Reeder did some guitar playing with them too. I
believe Reeder, because I think later on Reeder with Josh, they sued the other guys. Yeah, because they had a Caius Lives, I believe was the
right.
That was what they originally named it, and then you're right though. I think he toured with the Caius Lives. And then he sort of fell off, and then, I mean, just the drama part, I mean, of all that stuff, you know what I mean? But you're right. No, I think he was originally with them, though. Yes, he was. Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah. No, dude, I'll take that record any day of the week over just about anything that's been out there. Because what a great record. There's a few records of that genre of the last 10 years or so that I can't stop listening to, but that's. That one, first Scorpion Child record, Band of Gold. I really can't say. I like Band of Gold. I love it. But I'll be honest, I love that Acoustic Cowboys record even more.
Oh yeah,
that's an unreal record.
Well, anything with that voice, man, it's
Yeah.
like I said, it's like it gets better every record he does, man. It really, it gets more soulful, it gets more, just intense, and it's great because to see him showcase, what he, the one thing about him, you remember when he was working with Carmen to Burn.
Yeah.
At one point, remember he was supposed to join them. I think they did a couple of those songs that were off the self-titled, and they put vocals to them, and I think they would have been called Nino Brown or something. They even had their own, I think, side band they were going to do. And, but I remember, Carmen to Burn, as everyone knows, right? They don't like singers. They're just not a fan of singers. But then remember, they always said that, John Garcia to them was the perfect singer. And I think the reason why they thought that was, and it is true. I mean, he has a phenomenal voice. And the impressive thing was when he was with Caius, he didn't overtake the band. He put his, he did his thing when it was called for within the song. And then he let the rest of the band obviously just did their own thing. And I think that's what makes him great. He never like overexerted himself with any band he was in. But he got to really showcase what he could do, obviously, once he went solo after they broke up, I think, and
Oh, and he's done so many great bands. That's the ironic thing. And I guess they're probably in a way they're just all kind of John Garcia solo projects of some sort.
They kind of are.
I mean, it all works or doesn't around him, but you could grab any of it, Slow Burn or Unita or Hermano even, or Mondo Generator, all of these bands, when he's involved in it, it's got that flavor.
It does,
and and even solo or Band of Gold, any of it, it all has his flavor, which makes it all good. So he's dude, like I said, man, interviewing him on his solo record in whatever year that was, 15, 16, that was holy grail stuff for me. And it was funny because I was trying to convince friends of mine, I was like, oh my God, I'm interviewing John Garcia. And most of them were like, who's that? It's like, I haven't heard of him. He's not in Metallica.
I know, right? Yeah.
And it's like you guys don't fucking know anything. This guy's as big as Metallica in his genre.
Sure.
Probably bigger. He's in Desert Rock. In Desert Rock, he's John Lennon.
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah. I remember, when I saw Vistacino, it was funny because I was in this place called Slim's here in the Bay Area.
Yeah,
that just closed down, unfortunately, and a great place to see a show. And I went over to check out the merch booth, and it was like I was already half in the bag, man. I had a nice buzz going on. I just just smoked up, and I just look up at the table. I'm like, oh shit, it was him. I mean, he was manning the table, the merch table, John Garcia. And I was kind of shocked because you don't expect to see. I was just like, oh hey, but I was like, well, hey, how you doing, man? Nice to meet you. He's just like, and he made a joke or something. Like, yeah, can you believe this, man? I have to do my own table, or like, it was a tongue in cheek kind of thing. It was a joke, but I mean, but he was great, man. He sat there and he hold on 1 second. Yeah, and he would talk to me, and he was great with the fans. I mean, just taking pictures. He was he was just a good dude, man. Just a real nice guy. I mean, very with the fans, and it was just funny to see him in the merch table. That was pretty funny, man. Just seeing that, you don't expect to see this idol in that scene all of a sudden doing his own merch. It's not something he needs to really do.
Right, no doubt, man.
Yeah. So just real quick.
Yeah.
I think we've got Parris Mayhew just texted. He should become sick.
Okay.
I guess something came up and I said he slipped his mind, so he's gonna come on, it looks like.
All right, good.
So we just gotta, wait a minute here or two and we could talk to him for a little bit. And
very good, man.
Yeah. It would have sucked being stood up again. We've had that happen a couple of times.
Live thing is harder than we thought, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, exactly. It's I mean, it is what it is, man. Especially now these days, right? It's like everyone's a little. I don't think there's other things people are focusing on now than I think music, because it's been sort of halted. So it's put to a halt here. So so we should be joined by him in just a minute. And just to quickly preface, him coming on here. Obviously, he's got this new song called Chaos Magic. It's an instrumental hardcore song, and it's got that classic Cro-Mag guitar sound.
Right.
And it's nice to hear new music from him. It's been about 20 years as well with him. I mean, the last thing he really did was the last Cro-Mags album with him in it back in 2000, Revenge. And so it's cool. He does too. He's a video director by himself. He's got his own video production company. He does he works on TV series. He's a professional cameraman. So and he's done, I mean, have you seen how many videos he's done back in the 90s? A lot of those metal and hardcore bands.
Oh
I mean, a whole bunch. Typo Negative, Biohazard. I mean, he did all those, especially those New York City ones.
Yeah, dude, what's interesting about him is these days, I mean, he's talk about an interesting career. He's definitely an interesting guy, but his TV history is interesting to me as a TV dork. He's such a strong, big personality. To see that he works on shows like Blue Bloods, which is such a family friendly, sit around having a prayer at the table to end the show every week.
Yeah,
it's like I can't even picture him standing in the same room shooting that.
True. Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly.
I was reading some of the shows that he's been on. I saw Blue Bloods, and I was like, wow, that is a pretty straight-laced show for a Parris Mayhew to be a part of.
No, totally. Yeah. So just one quickly. I mean, he didn't have to do this live here. So I got to send him the link here. Is this good through the phone?
If he's going to connect through the phone.
Yeah. Can he connect through a text message? Let's put it that way.
Yeah. As long as he's just going to connect to his phone. Sure.
All right. Let me go ahead and I'm going to try to do two here at once here.
That's all
text
good.
him and 1 second here. Because like I said, we want to get him on for sure.
I mean, you could just have him call if you wanted to.
That is true, but I think let me see here. I'll copy the link and send it right to him.
There you go.
And he could just do it on his phone.
Yeah. Live TV, folks.
Live. It's fun. I'm really starting to get a little understanding, not the same, obviously, kind of understanding, but a little preview of what what these people go through in live shows. It's.
I think I like doing them recorded up a lot better.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, I do live with the CMS every week, but that's a different animal.
That's a different animal. Yeah.
At least on that one, I know who I'm talking to is on the other side. There he is.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, let's get him in. Yeah, there he is. All right, let's bring him on. There he is, the man himself, Mr. Parris Mayhew. What's up, Parris? How you doing?
I'm exhausted, and I got to apologize for being late. I worked today on a TV show, and I literally came home and fell asleep, and I turned around and grabbed my phone, and I saw your text, and I was like,
"Hey, man, it happens, man. We understand, man. These days, especially, especially now, like you said, you're back to work, so no biggie, man. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate you coming on. And getting up, and hopefully we're not waking you too much out of your slumber there, but
No, I'm glad. I'm glad you understand, because I really do appreciate sharing your audience with me, and I really appreciate it, and I didn't want to make it seem like I didn't.
Yeah, no, I didn't think you'd flake like that, so I figured it was a reason, man. All good, man. Well, anyway, let's go ahead, man. Let's talk about what's been going on with you, man. It's been a while. I think about 20 years now. I think since we've heard new music from you, and here you are now. You've got your new project here, Agros. You got the new song and video, Chaos Magic. That's out, man. It's got the classic, elements from your tone and style that we're all used to, from the Cro-Mags days. And when we did the interview together last year, I remember you mentioned that you had plenty of material that you'd been working on over the years, but that it'd been sort of difficult to find other musicians to sort of work with you, and maybe just because you'd have some guys that were around and they'd leave, just to really keep the lineup consistent. I know that was kind of a little bit of a struggle for you to put together a full band. So here it is. You're doing your own thing. So I guess go ahead and I guess just talk about, the new video, the song, how it came about, especially the video. I mean, the video is really awesome. It's got all the, that dark New York City, like reminds me of like when I was going to shows in Manhattan and coming home at night and there's no one around, and, it has that kind of vibe to it, which I love. So go ahead and just tell us about, the new song and the video and how it all came about, man.
Well, that feeling that you just expressed was exactly what I was trying to do. I was trying to show New York from a New Yorker's point of view, and not from the point of view of a tourist or from watching Sex and the City or Gossip Girl.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be more like Fort Apache, the Bronx, or the Warriors.
Sure.
To have the feeling that that New York City has in those moments when it's 5 o'clock in the morning and you just came from a show and you're walking across the Williamsburg Bridge and you're looking back at the city all by yourself and basking in the sodium vapor light that New York used to be so beautifully bathed in, but you can only find it in certain places. And that's why I ended up shooting on the Williamsburg Bridge, because I feel like it's one of the places that's frozen in time from our youth. That like literally, if you go up on the bridge today, it's really no different than it was, the first time I went up there 40 years ago or whatever it was. And so I, just trying to keep a close association or what I call a regional imprint on my music, because I feel to a large extent that I'm a product of the city and my music is a product of the city. And I thought that visual imprint would be important. And then I didn't even realize what I was doing. Now I can't imagine anybody who's seen the video who comes to New York and walks across the bridge at midnight not feeling like they're connected to the song.
Sure, yeah.
I didn't do that on purpose, but I hope that'll be a byproduct of it.
Yeah, yeah,
But
no, definitely.
But in terms of like what the conversation we had last time, I try to always, and I don't try, I just play all the time, write all the time. And I did attempt many, many times to play with other people. And I auditioned 1,000 singers and I auditioned 1,000 drummers, and I played with certain people from time to time. But I just wasn't really getting what I needed out of it. I wasn't getting a reciprocal musical relationship. I didn't really feel like anybody was bringing something to the plate. And every time I did play with somebody, like I played with this drummer Cobbs, who played on the recording, played really excellently on the recording, but he was always pressuring me to get anybody to just fill the space. And he would bring in like his friends, and he thought there was something important about somebody else standing in the room and playing the songs with us. And I said, well, you're not the one who's going to have to teach them these extraordinarily difficult parts,
right?
And then live with how terribly they play them. And so, I kept telling him, if they don't come to the table with something, I mean, even if he had brought somebody with great skill to the table and they were able to execute the songs, what else did they bring? I didn't need a placeholder.
Sure.
So, we didn't really get along musically that way, because he had different kinds of goals than I had. My goal was to make music the best I could, and his goal was to get 5 people in a room and then go play some little place for 25 of his friends, and that just wasn't what I was interested in. So, and I want, to me, the whole pleasure of playing music is getting it from beginning to end. The discovery of picking up your guitar and playing it and playing it and playing it till you find, pan for gold, until you find something that pleases you. And then you just keep doing it till you find another piece. And then they're basically puzzle pieces. And some of those puzzle pieces you collect and you put in your back pocket for years. And then one day you strike another chord that hits you and you realize, oh, I can put that together with that. And when you spend so much time and thought assembling these puzzles, you don't want them just to be thrown out there. And also that became an issue with vocals. To a large extent, I wrote almost all the music I've ever written as instrumental, and trying to make it as interesting as possible, just as music, and feel complete. And then I would always be stuck with whatever someone put on it who just happened to be there at the time, be it any of the singers that I've ever worked with at the time. And then I'm stuck with what they have to say. And unfortunately, I haven't felt like any of the things that they said were relevant to anything in my life. So I didn't want another person speaking for me.
Okay.
And I feel like the music speaks for itself anyway. It's a complete musical thought. I feel like at every point in the song, you feel like you're being led to where you need to go, and that there's nothing missing. Maybe I won't feel that way about all the music I write, but I certainly feel that way about Chaos Magic. And so I did all the parts myself, and played it the way I wrote it. And it feels complete to me. And of course, Cobb's drumming is spectacular.
Yeah.
He's a spectacular musician. He just likes different music than I do. He's like a death metal guy.
Okay.
And he's always like, can't we be a death metal band? And I was just looking at him and go, I was like, yeah, I get you want to do that. I don't really do that. This is what I do. And he's like, okay. And then at some point he even said to me, he goes, if I put together a death metal band, will you be in it? I said, well, I'll do it if I don't have to write any songs, and if we'll keep playing my songs on
right.
And he said, okay. So I tried that for a while, and it just didn't work. It was the funny thing is, we got together once, and like me and like two of his friends, one of them became my friend. We played, and it was absolutely awesome. For 2 jams, we had this great jam, and then it just fell apart for God knows what reason. I have no idea, but I kept saying, let's do it again. And they never did. So I just went forward with doing what I was doing. But Chaos Magic was something, I wrote over the years, and I completed it recently. And I took advantage of the pandemic to shoot the video. And I literally spent so much time shooting it. I really might have set myself up for a failure for the second video, because I don't know how I'm going to put that much effort in the second one, but I will.
Well, yeah. Well, speaking of, I think I read that, your plan going forward with Agros is to do that, right? Release a single at a time with a video for each, which is something I know a lot of, musicians are starting to do, instead of releasing, just a full length album, because obviously there's such a, the average music listener's got such a short attention span these days that it just makes no sense. The market's so saturated with, streaming and everything. So, I guess go ahead and talk about your plans in terms of, is that what you're going to actually do then, is just take it slow, release a song here or there with a video, and just kind of take it from there?
My plan is to make music I like, and put it out at the pace that suits my creative output. Like I really like to put a lot of time into making a music video or writing a song. I do have a bunch of songs recorded with a bunch of different drummers. And I am planning to put all those songs out, but it will be with a video, and that's what's going to slow it down. Because I'm not on a record label's timetable. Nobody's telling me you have to do this by this time, and you're going on tour. And since there's no touring, I'm definitely under no pressure at all. It actually serves me to stretch it out. Because say if we're looking at a year before real shows start happening again, if I can spread, 6 or 7 songs out over the next year with a solid video, then I'll have, then I'll be basically setting myself up for that tour. Whereas most bands would put out an entire album and tour a month later. I'm going to basically be reintroducing myself to anybody who's interested. And by the time they have a little catalog of what I'm doing, it'll be time to take on the road. And who knows where it'll be at that point, because, I put out the video, and within 2 days I started getting texts from people saying things like, Agros, I want in.
Right.
Wow. Very cool.
So in 6 months, my little thing might be our little thing.
Very cool.
And I'm totally open to that. I even told my wife, who's my partner in everything, I said that my plan is to put out the song and reintroduce myself, but it's also an invitation. If Rob Halford wants to come and sing on Chaos Magic, he's more than welcome.
Sure.
Yeah.
No question. Well, Parris, I wanted to go back to that singer thing just for a minute, and I wanted to ask, based on what you said about how difficult it is to find a singer to portray the message and to portray what you want it to be. Have you, or do you consider writing the lyrics so that it does say exactly what you want to say, and then just finding a voice to fulfill your message?
I've certainly considered that, but it's one of those things where, you like that old saying, you don't hire a professional and not take his advice. You don't find an artist and then not let him do what he does. I figure it, like my statement before about finding somebody who brings something to the table. I want somebody who has something to say, and I want, when they sing it, to mean it. And I don't want to be their puppeteer. I mean, if I was lucky enough to find someone like Roger Daltrey, who was willing to do that and had a fucking great voice like him, maybe it'd be a different story. But I really would like to have somebody who had a voice, a singular voice, and a message, or at least a poetic voice. Like Chris Cornell. The guy was a walking, talking poet,
right?
And the fact that he had the greatest voice in the world, he probably could have said "eeny, meeny, miny, mo," and we would have loved it. But he just also happened to be an extremely articulate. He had the ability to paint a picture with a couple of words that was just fantastic. And I would love to find that. I would love to find a Lane, a Bon Scott. I'm not looking for a type, really. All those people, like an HR from the Bad Brains,
Sure.
all these people, Johnny Rotten, they just had these singular presences with their voices. And the one of the things that I found that was so extraordinary was when I would audition people, I would say, just pick up your iPhone and turn on the camera and record yourself singing for 1 minute. And almost nobody would do it. They would all say, "Oh, I don't feel comfortable with that." And I said, "Well, that's because you're not a singer. If you walked up to Liza Minnelli on the street and you said, 'Liza, would you sing me?' She would just start singing.
Right.
Before you even got the words out of your mouth. You know why? Because Liza Minnelli is a singer.
Right.
Sure.
Certainly.
She loves singing, and if you ask a singer to sing and he says, 'Oh, I don't feel comfortable with this. I would like to do a proper demo.' Give me a fucking break. If I wanted to be in a band and somebody said to me, 'Make a video for 1 minute of you playing bass,' I would make a video that would get me in that band."
Sure. I'm going to devil's advocate this just for a minute, though. You're an intimidating guy. Maybe you don't think so, but I think the world thinks so. And the flip side of that would be, oh my God, I got 1 minute to make or break my chance to work with this guy who's, legendary. Obviously your Cro-Mags stuff is legendary. Age of Quarrel is a legendary record. And now you're putting them on the spot to give you 1 minute to determine if they can work with you. Do you not see that as intimidating for a singer that would want to work with you, and maybe you could work with in the future if you had more time to sit down with them and understand what they do?
Do you think Rob Halford is intimidated by me?
Oh, Rob Halford, he might have been. I don't think Rob Halford is now, but I'll bet you Rob Halford in 1975 would have been.
Perhaps. But I'm not looking for somebody to show up enamored with the past. I, in a lot of ways, would prefer to find somebody who doesn't know anything about the Cro-Mags and is just interested in playing this new batch of music. I actually was working with a singer for a little while.
Okay.
And he was a young actor, trained singer, perfect pitch. And we he didn't know anything about the Cro-Mags. And one of the things that he was concerned about was that he would be overshadowed by the past. And I told him, it's going to be just like anything else. By the time a band picks up steam, 90% of their fans are new. And all they'll care about is what we're doing now. And it's just, that same phenomenon happened in the Cro-Mags. There were people who discovered Best Wishes and just went back and listened to Age of Quarrel and didn't get it. And there were people who bought Revenge and tried to go back. They were like, oh, I love this. I'm going to go back and listen to these other albums. And they just didn't get Age of Quarrel. I guess it depends on the context. But the only reason it didn't work out with him is because he was like always getting jobs. Like one day he calls me up and we worked on 2 songs that I thought were great. And then he goes, oh, I got the job being Danny Zuko in Greece in London. Okay. and he was gone for a year. And then he came back, and then we jammed here for like 2 weeks, and then he disappeared again. He's following his opportunities. I don't think he really had the perspective to really realize that what we were doing in this room would go somewhere. That's another problem when you deal with these young musicians. They start saying things like, well, I want to make sure we can rehearse in Queens because, I have my job and all. I'm like, I don't intend to make a career. I always tried to let them know I don't, you don't realize how close we are to what it is you think you want as a musician, which is touring and making records and stuff like that. I realize how close it is because all I did was record a song in an afternoon, make a video and put it out. And here we are. I mean, I know how fast it works. If you have a past and I knew that past would carry me somewhere quickly, and it's just hard to make them understand that. But that's why it didn't work out with him. And it wasn't like a creative differences. It wasn't like we didn't like each other. It wasn't scheduling. It was just that he had a different, he had a different path.
Sure. Yeah.
And I can't wait for people anymore. That was another thing. It's like, I to a large extent, I say, I work in the film business and it takes up all my time. And it does. I work 13, 14 hours a day, 5 days a week for the past 20 years. And it's an exhausting, fulfilling and great paying job. And I love it. And it's fantastic. But I have all along tried to play music with other people. It just hasn't worked out.
Right.
Sure. Yeah. No, definitely.
And so but when I say it hasn't worked out to a large extent, it was because I was waiting for people. Like there was this guitar player I played with for a long time, and I kept attaching something to him that I didn't need. Like I'm a team player. I work great in a film crew. I love the idea of being in a band. I love this mythical Aerosmith Beatles thing where you have all these people that contribute equally, and that's what makes it such a spectacular thing. But I've always been in a band where I came to the plate with mostly everything creative, and everybody else just kind of executed what I did, and I didn't get along with them. I always dreamt of that thing where somebody else would come in and play me a song that would blow me away. And then the other guy would say, oh, I've got a part for that. I just never had that. But I met this guitar player and this bass player, and I was playing with them. And I really tried to encourage them. And I coddled them to a large extent that it got to the point where like they were like, let's play this kind of thing. And, it was almost like the way Cobb said to me, can we play death metal? This guy was saying to me, can we be more like the Black Crowes? And I go, well, I really like the Black Crowes, but that's not what I do.
Right.
So you end up going in all these directions, trying to like cater to the needs of other people in the band, but they're not. But if their needs don't take you anywhere, it just becomes like this endless coddling. And I just decided just to do it by myself.
Right.
Yeah, very cool. Well, speaking of that too, just from obviously, our discussions last year too, you're someone who's, it's interesting how you sort of create your sound because your influences aren't usually the typical influences, obviously, that you hear out of punk and hardcore. Exactly, right there. Exactly. Rush. I know you're into a lot of the progressive stuff. I know Led Zeppelin. You say you're a big fan of. Usually, hardcore. I know you're also very influenced by Motorhead, so I'm assuming that's where a lot of your hardcore style comes from, is from that influence. But most people who play your type of music are it's more punk or influenced. It's not really the classic rock, progressive rock type of influences that most have. So how did your guitar set? Because you've got such unique sound. It has this distinctive sort of, I call it like a wail. It's just, it's almost like it's like a voice to it at the end of it. It doesn't just end, the riff doesn't just end. It can almost continues, it's very, finite, I guess is, the word I would use. Where did your sound come from? What's really, how did you sort of come up with that style that's so unique and that really sort of created that really classic, New York hardcore guitar sound, from back when Age of Quarrel came out?
I'd imagine it's a conglomeration of a lot of things. I'm just a fan of music. I love, Led Zeppelin is my favorite band, and I love the Sex Pistols and Motorhead just as much as I love Led Zeppelin. And I just don't do what Zeppelin does. I just do what I do, and earlier in my musical life, I guess I kind of mentally aspired to be like Yes and Rush and these bands. When I say mentally, because even to this day, I'm not anywhere in terms of skill or on the level of someone like Steve Howe. Steve Howe is just an extraordinary guy, but I certainly collected little things from Steve Howe, and I collected little things from Alex Lifeson and Geddy Lee and definitely Lemmy. But I think the turning point was when I started, listening to bands like Motorhead or heard bands like Motorhead for the first time in the Sex Pistols, and realized that they moved me just as much as Rush did, or Aerosmith or Van Halen, and I was seeing bands in clubs that moved me the way these stadium bands that I thought were completely untouchable did. And so I applied what I could do to my aspirations. And I just started playing, and I never tried to figure out how to play Yes songs or Rush songs or anything. To this day, if somebody came over and they were like, "Hey, let's jam a Led Zeppelin song," I couldn't do it, because not that I couldn't do it, I just won't do it. I just have no interest in playing other people's music. So I just started writing my own songs and playing them over and over and over and over till I got incredibly good at playing my own songs. I mean, most of the songs, not most of the songs, but to a large extent, a lot of the songs on Age of Quarrel, I was playing to the peak of my ability when I wrote them. When I wrote World Peace, I was playing it as hard and as fast as I could, and I could just barely achieve the performance by writing the song. And that went and that continued with Best Wishes. A song like Down But Not Out was a riff that I would just sat in my room and played it as hard and as fast as I could to the peak of my ability, playing as many changes as I could make it happen to kind of at least resemble the complexity of a Rush or a Yes, but within the context of what I did. And then, even if you listen to a song like Chaos Magic, there are parts on there that, I'm literally playing to the peak of my ability. And I remember when, early on, I was one of my musical friends, which was the greatest thing about being a musician, was having this like little circle of friends in New York. And one of my friends was Mark from Carnivore. What a pleasure that is, just that one of my pals was in Carnivore. Another one of my pals was in Murphy's Law, and people, the guys I knew in the Bad Brains, just having that was a spectacular thing. But Mark used to always talk about this idea of playing to the peak of your ability. And he learned that when he joined the Crumbsuckers. And he said when suddenly he was playing these songs where every single song he performed was literally like, if it was just a little bit harder, he wouldn't be able to perform it.
Oh, wow.
And I think that's just where this part of my style comes from. It's just me playing the heart to the peak of my ability every time. I don't know why. I mean, it won't be like that with every song, because I have a bunch of songs that are coming out that doesn't take a lot of physical skill to play, but I think they still sound like me. Like, it's funny that you were talking about that thing about the guitar having a voice, because I do have this song called I See Light, and I'm actually juggling the idea of what song to start the next video for, and it'll probably just be based on an idea I come up with that connects with the song. But there's a slide guitar part in the song I See Light, oddly enough, and it sounds like singing. And I almost want to make the video just so I could put it out and be like, oh, here's this really cool thing I did. My wife always jokes, she goes, it's like on some comedy show, which I've never seen, where, every time she hears someone playing guitar a lot, she goes, look what I can do. Do you know what that is? It's like some kind of comedy thing. Like, this guy dances around and he says, look what I can do. So whenever like I play a band like Polyphia or Yngwie and someone's playing really crazy, you hear my wife in the other room go, look what I can do. Look what I can do. But anyway, I felt that way about this song. Even though it's not complex, it does sound like sounds almost like a chorus of people singing. And that's what I search for when I'm playing my guitar all the time, is to find something that's unusual if you can't be surprising with music, then it just becomes boring. And I think that's what I really tried to do with Chaos Magic, was to do what I do. I just couldn't help but do what I do, but I also try to do something surprising. But so that's like that the riff that goes from the slow part to the fast part, I just tried to play something that I'd never heard anybody play before. And I had seen this band in Texas. I was mentioning this to somebody the other day because I hadn't thought about it in a long time, but I was just down in Texas and I went into this little club and there was this band called Spunk, Spunk. Okay. And they were just a bunch of Texas boys, and they were playing some crazy fucking music that made absolutely no sense to me. It seemed like all of them were playing something different, but they were all playing together, and it was fantastic. And it just gave me a little perspective on how a riff doesn't just have to be boom tap, AC/DC style. Not that I ever did that before, but it was really unhinged. So I think as a result, even though I wrote the song like many, many years later, that I was absolutely thinking of them when I wrote that.
Oh, wow. Oh, very cool. Very awesome, man. Well, Parris, having grown up myself in New York and going to, New York hardcore shows and being around the scene itself and the people that encompass it, from what I can gather, just as an observant person who's a fan of your music, and I've had obviously the opportunity to speak to you before this, and this is in no way to be perceived in a negative manner. In fact, it's really completely the opposite of that. But even though you've been so influential musically on the New York hardcore scene, as well as your video production stuff that you've done with all those bands in the 90s, Biohazard, Typo Negative, so many bands that you did videos for, you've obviously are a huge part that's made the scene what it is today, 35 plus years later. It just seems to me like you are a bit of an outlier within the community of New York hardcore in terms of, your musical peers. I mean, even going back to the early days, to me, you seem like a very more of an individualistic person who, you think outside the box, where you're inside a community in New York hardcore where they prefer mostly to stay within certain parameters, whether it be musically, as well as, when it comes to self-expression and communication. And it's interesting because your name does seem to get overlooked a lot when discussions arise about the old time great, musicians and people within the New York hardcore scene. Do you feel like sometimes you don't get the respect you deserve within the community because you're an individual who seems to, not really have any interest in sort of inserting yourself into the social fabric of that New York hard community? It really is.
I can't speak to that. I don't hang out on street corners anymore, so I don't know what they're saying. But when I was standing on a street corner, the thing that appealed to me about music was all the bands that were called hardcore. It's very similar to this whole phenomenon of grunge. Like, tell me what the fuck does Alice in Chains and Pearl Jam have in common? Seattle.
Yeah,
that's it. The music. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Nirvana and Screaming Trees, Soundgarden. The thing that was extraordinary about that scene, even though they somehow clumped it together and called it grunge, was there were all these bands that were doing something cool and they were doing something their own, and that's what was the strength of the New York hardcore scene that appealed to me. As a music fan, I wasn't going there to go to see hardcore. I was going there to see this extraordinary mixing pot of creative people. And as little as Alice in Chains and Pearl Jam had in common, it's the same with the Misfits and the Bad Brains, or the Cro-Mags and the Dead Kennedys. All those bands, to me, were doing something really, really cool and really, really special and really, really their own signature thing. But they were all very, very, very different. So there was no real blueprint. There was no uniform. There was no set, ethic. It was all being made up as we were going along. It was literally like every day you'd go downtown, somebody would have come up with some new thing or new word or slang. Like all the kids that I used to hang out with, they had their own slang on this 4-block radius of Avenue A that was totally different than the kids that I knew in high school. And everybody was making this great individual music. And And people say to me, well, what do you think of the hardcore scene today? And I really can't speak to it because I'm not there all the time listening to all the bands. I'm sure there's a lot of great bands. But what I see as a result of what we did back then, of this spark of all these individual bands, and if you really want to see a trail from where that went and the influences and the impact it had on music, I wouldn't even look within the hardcore scene. I would look out in the world. Like if you look at a band like System of a Down, that band is so influenced by the Dead Kennedys, it's unbelievable. I mean, I can't listen to the System of the Down without thinking of the Dead Kennedys.
Right.
And when I hear Slipknot, I think they are way more akin to what, or where, like, you know, to the Crumbsuckers and the Cro-Mags than anything that I've heard. Not that I've heard a lot, but you know, when I do hear Slipknot, I hear a hardcore band that can play really, really well and write creative and crazy creative stuff. And this, you know, so I know a lot of people will like poo-poo that, but that's what I see. You know, if somebody like transported me from the street corner in 1983 when I was like listening to the Dead Kennedys all the time, and they transport, you know, all of a sudden I was transported, and somebody sat me down and played me System of a Down and Slipknot, I'd be like, wow,
Right.
they got really good fast. You know,
That's right.
These guys, you know, are they from our block?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So I definitely see the effect or the ripple of what we did back then. But I just don't necessarily see it being called hardcore. And you know, I'm open to hearing everything and anything. I like I said, I'm a fan of music. I love the Crumbsuckers. I loved Minor Threat. I love Black Flag. And again, none of those, like, what the hell do the Crumbsuckers and Minor Threat have in common?
Right.
No, good point. Yeah.
You're right, man.
Yeah.
You know, Parris, I wanted to go back to where you were talking about how you have a plan to release music, where you were saying that you've got 6 or 7 songs that you're planning to release, you know, with videos and basically, I don't think it's you adapting to the way music is today as much as it's just the way you want to do music now. And I'm curious, do you think that music itself, the profession of music, has become so commercialized and disposable that it's almost impossible to create something like an Age of Quarrel, as an example, that has legs that will live for 30, 40, 50, 100 years and will always be referred to? But in today's world, we just don't have that because of the technology has made it almost impossible to create something mammoth that has the legs. Do you agree or no?
I don't know. I mean, you know, in personal relationships, you teach people with every interaction how to treat you, and they know the parameters of what they can get away with and what they can't, because you teach them that by saying no.
Right.
And we can also teach people a new context for music. And not that I'm have such a master plan, but I'm not concerned with the attention span, today's attention span. I'm going to make the music exactly the way I feel like making it. I'm going to package it the best I can.
Sure.
Because I have this ability to make film. It's just something I can do, and it's something I love doing, and I want to make a video for every single song. So every single song will have some kind of visual message attached to it, and it will have value, and it'll give you something to go back to over and over again. I mean, you can watch Chaos Magic. I know people that told me I've watched the video 50 times. I was like, have you noticed the rats yet? And they're like, what? I said, there's at least 50 rats in the video. And they're like, oh my God, I got to go back and look.
Right.
And I hid all kinds of things. There are helicopters, rats, all kinds of crap in the video. But I figure by doing this, by taking it so seriously and putting so much effort into it, I will teach people how to appreciate my stuff. If they don't stop in their tracks and say, this is something better, This is something special. This, at least in terms of the effort that's put in. I'm not going to make any judgment on whether it's good or bad. I just, for them, I'm just saying that if they're not able to recognize the effort that's put in, then I don't, then it's not for them.
Sure.
So in that way, I feel like I'm teaching them. Like none of my music is going to be free. Like I'm not putting anything on Spotify or anything like that. I have my website. You can, if you want to buy my song, you can buy it from my website. It won't be available anywhere else.
Okay.
And I will make. I'm planning to make a 7-inch of Chaos Magic, and the next 3 songs that I put out will be a 4-song EP. But this, I mean, it certainly isn't a commercial adventure. I hope to play shows and travel the world and play my music, and I hope for it to support itself. But I don't, I have no interest in signing to a record label. I don't even know what they do anymore.
Right.
And I'm not worried about those things. I'm not worried about I'm not worried about what the budget of my video is, because I'm doing it. I'm going to put everything I have into it to make it as good as it can. Because every song that I write, it's part of me. Just like every song on Age of Quarrel is part of me, except for 1 or 2. And I feel connected to them, whether, why wouldn't I? They're mine.
Sure. No, you're right. Now is one aspect more important than the other? Is the song more important than the video, or the video more important than the song? Because it seems like you have more attachment, and maybe it's because your day-to-day life is in the movie and TV world, that the video is more important than maybe other musicians would give it.
Well, I mean, I certainly put in more effort than anybody else would do, but the only thing I can, like I said, it's not for me to say, but I don't think anybody would watch the video if they didn't like the music.
Fair enough.
No matter how good it was.
True.
I mean, there are tons of big, huge budget videos that no one ever saw. It's like, even, Biohazard, for example, I did videos for them that cost $10,000 that got played on MTV and got them to headline Dynamo. And then the first video they did that I didn't direct cost $100,000, and MTV rejected it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, it's definitely crazy how that all works. I wanted to talk to you real quickly too about the TV, or the video world, I guess TV and movies. I read an interview that you did. I'm not even sure when you did it, but where you said that the people that work in the movie industry are just so much more professional than the people in the recording industry. Why do you feel like it is that way? You would think that there's more maybe it's just me being stupid, but I would think that there's more opportunities to get work in the movie industry, where people would be less focused, where there's so few opportunities to actually excel in the music industry. But it from what you were saying, it really seems like it's quite the opposite, that the people are very professional in the movie world because they have to be, or maybe I misread it, but
no, that's exactly right. For example, the average TV show that I work on, it costs production $55,000 an hour.
Wow.
To have the crew on set. So, you waste 10 minutes, and that's a lot of money.
Right.
And we don't waste time on set. People show up, they do their jobs, they do it really, really well. They don't complain, they don't boo-hoo, and they execute. And if they don't, there's somebody standing in line behind them who can. So the thing about the film business is the people that succeed, the people who excel succeed. It's not like one of these businesses like in the record business. The record business is just crowded with people who fail up and support their other failure friends. I'm talking about on the business side, in the record labels and stuff. People that are competent get pushed out. They will expose the incompetence, and I saw that endlessly. There's no people don't go to Oxford to become A&R men.
Right. Fair enough. Yeah. Do you actually, and this is kind of an odd question, I guess, but do you enjoy the shows that you work on? Like, for the life of me, just knowing the little tiny bit that I know about you, which is basically, you know, hardcore and Cro-Mags and whatnot, I don't see you as a guy sitting around watching Blue Bloods. You know, I just can't fathom that you're sitting around, you know, you and your wife holding hands at the prayer table at the end of the show. You know, I mean,
at the family dinner.
Yeah, the family dinner.
I think, I mean, I got to tell you, I like Blue Bloods, and I really liked working on Blue Bloods. The main, I think the primary reason I liked working on Blue Bloods is because the crew was so cool.
Okay.
Like the grips, you know, I made friendships that have lasted. The director of photography was such a great guy, and the cherry on top is Donnie Wahlberg. He's the coolest fucking guy. And he's so cool to the crew, and he's so cool to everybody on set. And he always made it fun. Like, you know, he would stop in the middle of shooting, and, you know, we'd be shooting on the street, and he would just say, stop. And he would run across the street and take selfies with like 20 fans and sign autographs. And he'd come back and say, who wants McDonald's? And he'd order the entire crew McDonald's or whatever they wanted, you know, just a high energy, positive guy. And, you know, you don't have that kind of thing in almost any work environment. And, that was really great working on that show. But to your question more specifically, like I had the pleasure of I had watched the first season of The Americans, which I thought was a great show.
Loved it.
And one day I got called, you know, and this was before I was working on a lot of television. The Americans was really the first TV show that I got in. Before that, I was doing television commercials, which is very lucrative, and it's great work. And a lot of the people that I know on TV are like, I can't believe you gave up commercials to work on TV. I just like the team effort of working on a television show with the same crew for months and months. Okay. Whereas on commercials, it's just one day at a time. But I went into work in The Americans for one day to do one shot. And I went in, I did this one crazy long shot around the FBI office. And then the director of photography said to me, what are you doing for the next 4 months? And I became a regular crew member on Blue Bloods for the next 4 months. I mean, not Blue Bloods, but The Americans. And then they brought me back for the next season, which was season 4. So I was able to do 2 seasons. And then that DP cinematographer left The Americans, and then I never returned to that. I just went off to do other things. I did movies and TV shows. But, you know, when you finish 2 seasons of The Americans, you can't help but be proud of all the work you did, because every frame of that show is great. The acting is great. The cinematography is great. You know, you're working with directors and producers who created and directed like the first season of the X-Files.
Right.
You know, those are the same people.
Right.
Dan Sackheim, you know, watch season 1 of the X-Files and you see Dan Sackheim's name every day. And I would go to work with him every day.
Wow.
That's awesome, man.
So, I mean, that to answer your question. And then I work on a lot of cool movies. I worked on A Dog's Purpose with Lasse Hallström, the director, who did Chocolat and Salmon Fishing in the Yemen. And the cinematographer was the guy who did both those movies, Terry Stacy. And I've done TV shows with him. And I did Den of Thieves with Gerard Butler. You know, it's, you know, machine guns and explosions and cameras, and it's awesome.
Right.
Just the greatest thing. And then I get a check.
Most important thing, right?
Most importantly, no, dude, it's interesting. You mentioned The Americans. The Americans, if it did nothing else right, which I loved it. I hate that they ended that show. They could have kept that show going for another 10 years and I'd have been fine with it. But
me too.
The one thing that really made that show stand out, at least in my eyes, just as a fan, was how well they did the setting at, you know, in the appropriate time. It was the only other show I can think of that comes off the top of my head that was so perfectly looking was that show Mindhunter that's on Netflix right now. Because and the only reason I know that is because in my other business they came out to I own a pinball place, so, you know, pinball and arcade, and Mindhunter came out and rented 30 of my games to build an arcade, and literally I had to go through with them for a day just going through the machines and saying, okay, well, when was this released? Oh, it was October of 81. No, we can't use that because the piece is set in April of 81.
Wow.
So, you know, it was really intense, and it really made me change my appreciation for how TV works. And like you said, it's $55,000 an hour. Well, I get it with, you know, the fact that they sent a guy to spend 8 hours with me looking at pinball machines, you know, to do and then when I saw it on Mindhunter, the whole scene with all my games in it was, I think, 46 seconds. And I was like, geez, oh man, 46 seconds. They spent $100,000 on this.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, the art department on The Americans was great. I remember one time walking up to set and there were all these posters on the wall, and it's, you know, they're in DC, and it was just when they had just hit the 80s. So there were all these hardcore posters, like SOA, Henry Rollins's band.
Sure.
And I saw the poster and I just thought, that is so cool. And then someone mentioned like, oh, you know, you should get them to put Cro-Mags posters up. I was like, we weren't around in 1980.
Yeah.
Great.
True. Well, Parris, why don't you go ahead, man? We're going to wrap it up here. Why don't you go ahead and let the audience know, do the plugs, let them know where they can, you know, listen to New Agro's music, find the Chaos Magic video, and whatever else you want to throw out there for them to find you at, where to find you.
Well, please go to youtube.com/theagros, AGGROS. And there you can see the video. And if you subscribe, you'll get notifications for all subsequent content, all the music videos. I'm going to do playthroughs, and I'm actually going to do a little segment called Guitars Are for Life, where I'm going to tell the stories of my guitars. Oddly enough, every one of my guitars has a crazy story. And I found just by calling around that I have a bunch of friends like Kirk Winstead from Down said he's going to do one. And I shot the first one already with Sean from the Toilet Boys. And everybody seems to have a really good story. So I'm going to do this little segment called Guitars for Life. That'll be on there. And I'll figure out some other stuff to keep people interested. And then I have the website agros.nyc, and it has, you know, your traditional store and info, and hopefully one day it'll have tour information. And, you know, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram, Parris Mayhew or the Agros. And you know, again, I appreciate you sharing all this with your audience.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for coming on. And obviously, you know, when we hear some new Agros, maybe we'd love to have you back on and talk more about it. For sure.
Absolutely. And I swear to God, I won't be in bed.
Hey, man, better
jump up and grab my Rush shirt.
There you go.
Yeah.
Nice.
Awesome. All right, Parris, it was great talking to you, buddy. And yeah, have a good one, man. We'll talk to you soon, hopefully.
All right. Great talking to you guys.
All right. Take care.
Take
buddy.
care, man.
Bye.
All right.
There we go.
There we go. All right. All right. Well, we had a little extra overtime tonight, huh? About 2.5 hour episode.
It's funny. We said beforehand, if Parris ends early, we'll just cut it. And you know, it's like, nope.
No.
That was great, dude. And we'll end this here in a second, but I love that we're starting to talk TV and movies with people.
I was just going to say, I'm like, wow, it's really starting to seep in. We had Michael DeBar's last week, and now we have Parris today. Yeah.
And awesome. Obviously, I'm always up for talking TV and movies because it's as much a passion to me as
I see that. Yeah.
as music is. I can talk for days about TV. So yeah, you know, that was great though. Considering that I obviously know Age of Quarrel, you know, and it's funny because you had told me that you know, that Parris is somewhat confrontational. Well, he was easy to talk to.
No, he's not confrontational. I mean, not with me. He's not confrontational. No.
I came in with a, you know, a litany of questions because like I was putting some questions down and then I was writing nice questions to go behind it in case I pissed him off. And
it's just, you know, I'm sure you see it, you know, that you've known me, you know, for a while now. It's the New Yorkers, especially, you know, they're very sensitive, man. You know what I mean? If you haven't noticed that yet, and you won't, you know, sometimes they could take things the wrong way or you know, just because it's just sort of the lifestyle in a lot of ways in New York City and just New York in general. Is, you know, there's sort of these unwritten rules of respect or whatever you want to call it, And if you cross it, sometimes it could cause that. But no, I mean, like I said, I spoke to, me and Bob did him last year, and
Sure.
I mean, he talked for 3 hours. He's got such he said not just the music, he does the movies, he's done the videos, he's got such a great history in entertainment. So it's always great, to chat with him. And I'd love to get him back on. Obviously, if once he gets more music out, and once he starts touring, that would be really cool.
Once he does it,
yeah.
and we'll break it down to an hour of music and an hour of TV.
Well, there you go.
I'll talk TV. I will talk TV with a guy like that for days.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I guess I'll have to study up on my my TV knowledge before we do that. Huh?
I'm sure once I started talking about timepieces and all that, it's like you were probably like, "Oh Jesus, where's this going?"
No. Hey, man, it's great. Like I said, man, this is what's great about what we're doing here is obviously it's an anything kind of goes thing. We're not.
Mm-hmm.
We're not just keeping, like I said, our parameters are open. We don't have any boundaries where you can't cross here. It's all open, So, it's great, man. All right, well, oh man, I'm sure you're exhausted. You're 3 hours ahead of me. Yeah, I can imagine.
I'm a little tired today, but
I guess we should let the audience know too that this will be the last one we do for a little while. Correct, with the Tremors. Yeah.
We're gonna take December off. Just because we've got, and not to be mysterious or anything, because there's nothing mysterious going on, but we just have, we've been, we talk about it here on the show a little bit. We plug it, I guess, as the CMS Podcast Network, but behind the scenes, there's a ton of stuff going on with the CMS Podcast Network. And in order to get that right, we kind of need the time.
We need the time.
We need the time to not be,
prepping for interviews. Yeah.
Spending 2 hours doing a show, 2 more hours prepping for the show.
2 more hours. I spend plenty more than 2 hours when I prep, man. So
and then there's always the actual production, putting it onto the podcast.
Exactly. The artwork and all that stuff with the banners.
I mean, every one of these shows takes roughly 10 hours.
Sure.
From each of us, and we need to put that time for the next little while into some of the great things that I think we have coming for the CMS Podcast Network, including the FU Pal, the video channel, which we're still building, and building out the podcast, and looks like we'll know tomorrow for sure, but it looks like we're adding at least one more show to the podcast network. So, we've got a lot of things going on where we need to take a little time to do that.
We need to recharge and take care of all the back, the backroom stuff, all the administrative, if you want to call it, stuff, just stuff that isn't, obviously that people can see. And not only are we adding another podcast to the network, it's a damn good podcast too. It's a very well-known one.
Absolutely. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to get episodes. Make sure you're subscribed to Aftershocks, whether it's on the video format, or just go to cmspn.com and find the Aftershocks link, or just sign up to get all the shows links, because as far as Aftershocks goes, you're still going to get your episodes. Just because we're not doing the live show does not mean we're already pretty much, I think we're done for the whole
the year almost, right? Yeah.
We've knocked out the interviews till the end of the year, so you're still going to get your interviews every Monday and every Thursday, but we got to recharge and set a few things here before coming back, and I'm sure we'll be back in January with new live shows.
We'll definitely be back. We might incorporate a few more things to it that we haven't been doing for the first 10 episodes, but we got 10 down, and we love this. It's just a lot of fun, and but when we I definitely I think once we take a break too, we're gonna be itching to start doing it again. So
probably
that's how it always goes. Even if it's a lot of work, it's like, man, it's fun. So it's great talking to all these guys, and it's great, of course, talking with you and doing our thing. And so I guess we're ready to bug out here. I guess we'll just keep it tight. Everyone can check out our social media pages to find out when we're going to do this again. Like I said, we'll be back in the new year.
Yeah.
Like I said, every Monday, Thursday, we still got the Aftershocks podcast. We've got the Classic Metal Show, of course, every Saturday. And, of course, we got Shockwave Skull Sessions, which is weekly. So,
as far as Aftershocks goes, brand new one hits, in 2.5 hours from now.
Yeah, exactly.
If I'm not mistaken, what is it? Yelvik? Is it Yelvik?
Yelvik is coming up now. Yep.
What's the name of that band? Velotalk.
Velotalk.
you know, but
Yeah.
but I ended up,
Norwegian band. Yeah.
yeah, I ended up talking to Jelvik about his brand new solo release, Welcome to Hell, which I believe comes out Friday. And you know, you can check that one out. It was a great interview. He was actually a good guy. And if you do nothing else, just look at his wall, because he has a big old bear, you know, there's a big old bear stapled to his wall behind him,
Really?
which I was just laughing my ass off when I watched the video of it, because he had that big old bear's head on the wall. So
Nice. That's the one thing I love doing these interviews. Is some of these backgrounds we get sometimes are pretty interesting. I think it's an important part when you're doing these videos. Instead of looking at your kitchen window, you know, it's nice if you got something, if it's a little crazy, like a bear in the back of your.
Well, that one was crazy, and you know which one was crazy was the one that you did with Mercedes Lander.
Oh, when she was on her bed and
she was sitting on her bed. You know, she was sitting on her bed like a 15.
I love that.
Girl,
I know. I love that. That's awesome. Yeah.
You know, legs crossed, laptop on the bed, and just happy to be there.
Oh, no, it totally is funny. All right, everyone. Well, have a great night, and yeah, look out for Aftershocks and all the other podcasts. And until the new year, I guess everyone have a great holidays, and we'll see you then.
See you, folks.
See you. Thanks for listening to Aftershocks. For more episodes, go to our website at www.aftershockspodcast.com. Visit us on our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages for more news and information on the podcast. And be sure to subscribe, listen to, and review all episodes on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all other podcast platforms. For your music listening pleasure, visit our website or go to www.shockwavesradio.com. For all comments and questions, please email us at info@aftershockspodcast.com.